Welcome, dear friend, to a quiet sanctuary woven from whispers of ancient wisdom. In the hurried currents of our modern lives, we often find ourselves adrift, pulled by unseen tides of anxiety, comparison, and unspoken hurts. We chase fleeting joys, battle inner critics, and yearn for a deeper peace that seems just beyond our grasp. Perhaps you feel the weight of a past regret, the sting of a shattered expectation, or the quiet ache of a connection lost. Tonight, as the world outside softens into twilight, I invite you to step aboard the empty boat. Here, amidst the gentle murmur of unseen truths, we will embark on a journey inward, a journey through 25 profound Zen stories, each a luminous pearl strung on the thread of ancient Buddhist and Stoic wisdom. These aren't just tales, they are mirrors reflecting the hidden corners of our hearts, offering solace, insight, and a path towards genuine liberation. With each story, we will gently explore the labyrinth of human experience, from the burden of unspoken words to the elusive pursuit of perfection, from the tangled webs of societal expectations to the quiet despair of feeling unseen. You don't need to do anything, achieve anything, or even understand everything. Simply lie back, breathe deeply, and allow these narratives to wash over you, like a soothing balm for the soul. Let go of your burdens, if only for a while. Release the need to control, to know, to strive. For in this quiet space, in the profound acceptance of what is, you might just discover the boundless peace that has always resided within you, waiting to be gently rediscovered. Your journey to inner freedom begins now. Let the stories unfold, and let your heart find its way home. Story number 1. The Whispers of the Unseen Thread. In the hushed embrace of a moonlit forest, where ancient trees stood like silent sentinels and the air hummed with the gentle lullaby of unseen life, there lived a young woman named Lyra. For as long as she could remember, a quiet ache resided within her, a persistent whisper of not quite belonging. It wasn't a loud, insistent cry, but a subtle hum beneath the surface of her days, a feeling of being a kite without a string, drifting aimlessly in the vast expanse of the sky. Lyra had journeyed far and wide, seeking a place where this whisper might finally fall silent. She had visited bustling marketplaces, vibrant with the laughter and chatter of people who seemed deeply rooted in their communities. She had sat by crackling campfires with nomadic tribes, their stories intertwining like the smoke rising to the stars. She had even sought solace in the quiet solitude of mountain hermitages, hoping the profound silence would somehow reveal a hidden connection. Yet wherever she went, the whisper followed, a phantom limb of longing for something just out of reach. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of lavender and deep indigo, Lyra found herself at the edge of a forgotten village, nestled deep within a valley. A single ancient temple stood at its heart, its wooden beams weathered by centuries of sun and rain, yet exuding an aura of profound peace. Drawn by an invisible force, she entered. Inside, an old monk with eyes like still pools of water sat in quiet contemplation. His presence radiated a warmth that seemed to gently untangle the knots in Lyra's chest. She approached him, her voice barely a whisper, echoing the feeling that plagued her. "Venerable one," she began, "I carry a constant sense of being adrift, of not belonging. I seek a thread, an invisible connection to something, anything that will ground me." The monk opened his eyes, a soft smile gracing his lips. "Ah, the search for the unseen thread," he said, his voice like the rustle of autumn leaves, gentle and wise. "Many embark on this quest, believing the thread lies somewhere outside themselves, waiting to be found and grasped. He gestured towards a delicate spider web shimmering with dew in a corner of the temple. Observe that web, Lyra. Each strand is impossibly fine, almost invisible. Yet together they form a structure of exquisite strength and intricate beauty. Does a single strand belong more than another? Is one less vital to the whole? Lyra gazed at the web, mesmerized. No, she murmured. Each seems to contribute to the whole, to its very existence. Precisely, the monk continued. And yet, if you were to cut one strand, the web would not collapse entirely. It would adapt, shift, and still hold. The essence of its strength is not in any single connection, but in the interconnectedness of all its parts, and in its inherent capacity to reweave and adapt. He then looked at Lyra, his gaze piercing yet compassionate. You seek an external thread, a visible bond to anchor you. But what if the thread you seek is not outside, but woven within the very fabric of your being? What if the feeling of not belonging is not a lack, but an invitation to discover the universe residing within you? He paused, allowing his words to settle in the quiet space. Imagine a vast tapestry, Lyra. Every being, every moment, every experience is a unique, vibrant thread within that tapestry. Some threads are brightly colored, easily seen. Others are muted, almost hidden. But none are truly separate. Your longing for connection is not a flaw. It is a deep, innate echo of this universal interconnectedness. You are already a part of the grand design. Not because you found a specific thread to cling to, but because you are a thread yourself. The monk then spoke of the nature of existence, drawing from the wellspring of ancient wisdom. In the teachings, we speak of dependent origination, that all phenomena arise in dependence upon other phenomena. Nothing exists in isolation. Your breath is connected to the trees, your thoughts to the shared human experience, your very being to the vast cosmos. When you feel alone, it is not an absence of connection, but often a forgetting of your inherent belonging to this intricate dance of life. He continued, his voice taking on a rhythmic, almost hypnotic quality. The Stoics, too, understood this. They spoke of living in accordance with nature, recognizing our place within the larger cosmic order. When we resist this flow, when we demand a specific external connection to validate our existence, we create our own suffering. True belonging isn't about fitting into a preconceived mold or finding a specific group. It's about realizing that your unique existence is already a perfect fit within the boundless, ever-unfolding universe. Lyra listened intently, a new understanding beginning to bloom within her. But the loneliness, she confessed, it can be overwhelming. It feels like a void. Ah, loneliness, the monk nodded. It is a profound teacher. It asks you to turn inward, not away. It invites you to cultivate metta, loving kindness for yourself. When you feel the sting of loneliness, do not flee from it. Sit with it, gently acknowledge its presence, and understand that it is a shared human experience. In that shared understanding, paradoxically, you begin to connect. For in the vast ocean of humanity, who has not known the ache of being alone? In that shared vulnerability, you are deeply, intimately connected. The void you speak of is not an emptiness to be filled by others, but an open space within you where clarity and profound peace can arise. It is the space of anatta, of non-self, the realization that there is no fixed, unchanging I separate from the flow of existence. When you cling to the idea of a separate I that needs to belong, you create the very feeling of isolation. Consider the inner critic that often accompanies this feeling, the monk went on, anticipating her unspoken thoughts. It whispers, "You're not good enough to belong. You're different. You'll always be an outsider." This inner critic is merely a collection of conditioned thoughts, echoes of past experiences or societal expectations. It is not the truth of who you are. To quiet it, we practice mindfulness, observing these thoughts without judgment, allowing them to arise and pass away like clouds in the sky. We do not engage with them, nor do we identify with them. They are merely phenomena, not your essence. And the fear of abandonment? Lyra asked, her voice softer now, less burdened. It feels so real. Fear of abandonment, the monk replied, is often a projection of a deeper fear, the fear of abandoning oneself. When you seek validation and connection solely from external sources, you inadvertently abandon the rich inner landscape of your own being. The practice is to return home to yourself, to cultivate an unshakable inner sanctuary. When you are truly present with yourself, truly accepting of your own unique path, the need for external validation diminishes, and the fear of abandonment loses its grip. He motioned for her to close her eyes. Imagine, Lyra, that you are the vast open sky. Thoughts, feelings, and experiences, including the feeling of loneliness, are like clouds passing through. They come, they stay for a while, and then they go. They do not define the sky. The sky remains boundless, unchanging in its essence. You are that boundless sky. To accept loneliness is not to resign yourself to a life of isolation, the monk concluded, but to transform it into a path of self-discovery and profound connection. For it is in facing this aloneness that you often discover the unseen thread of your own resilience, your own inner wisdom, and your inherent connection to all of life. You are never truly separate. The universe is not outside of you. You are a vibrant, integral part of the universe. As the monk spoke, a profound stillness settled over Lyra. The familiar whisper of not belonging began to fade, replaced by a quiet resonance, like a tuning fork vibrating with a deep, forgotten truth. She realized that the thread she sought was not a rope to grasp, but a delicate, invisible current flowing through her, connecting her to everything, everywhere. The aching void had transformed, not into something filled, but into an open spaciousness, vast and accommodating. She was not a kite without a string. She was the wind itself, inseparable from the boundless sky. She was and always had been home. Story number 2. Echoes in the Empty Space. In a secluded valley where mist often clung to the ancient pine trees, and the only sounds were the distant murmur of a mountain stream and the rustle of unseen creatures, lived a solitary woodcarver named Kael. His hands, gnarled and strong, could coax exquisite beauty from raw timber, delicate birds with outstretched wings, serene Buddhas with closed eyes, and intricate mandalas that seemed to hum with silent energy. Yet, despite the outward grace of his creations, Kael carried a heavy burden within him. It was a voice, not one he heard with his ears, but one that resonated deep within the empty spaces of his mind. A relentless, often cruel whisper that dissected his every action, every thought, every aspiration. "Your work isn't good enough," it would sneer, even as he painstakingly polished a finished piece. "You're too slow. You're not as skilled as others. No one truly appreciates what you do." When he made a mistake, even a tiny chip in the wood, the voice would amplify, echoing accusations of carelessness, incompetence, and unworthiness. "See, you always mess things up. You'll never be perfect. You're fundamentally flawed." This inner critic had been Kael's constant companion since childhood, shaping his perceptions and dimming the light of his spirit. It made him hesitant to share his art, fearful of judgment. It made him withdraw from the occasional traveler who stumbled upon his workshop, convinced he had nothing of value to offer. He longed for quiet, for peace, for the silence that truly matched the surroundings of his surroundings. But the echoes of self-reproach filled every corner of his inner world. One crisp autumn morning, as Kael sat at his workbench, staring blankly at an unfinished piece of cypress, the inner voice was particularly harsh, dissecting his every imagined failure. Overwhelmed, he rose and walked aimlessly until he found himself at the small, forgotten shrine at the valley's edge. An old hermit, known only as Master Rohan, was sweeping fallen leaves from the temple steps, his movements slow and deliberate, each sweep a meditation. Kael watched him for a while, then, unable to contain his anguish any longer, blurted out, "Master, my mind is a battlefield. There is a voice within me, relentless and unforgiving, that constantly criticizes, judges, and condemns me. It tells me I am not enough, that I am flawed beyond repair. How can I silence this tormentor?" Master Rohan paused his sweeping, his gaze gentle yet penetrating. "Ah, the echoes in the empty space," he said, his voice soft like the breeze rustling through the pines. "Many mistake these echoes for their own voice, their own truth. But they are merely reflections, Kael, not the source." He gestured to the open space around them. "Consider this valley. It is vast and empty. Yet, when you shout, it echoes your sound back to you. The valley itself doesn't generate the sound. It merely reflects what is given to it. So it is with your mind. The empty space of your awareness is neutral. The critical voice you hear is not its inherent nature, but an echo of words and judgments you have absorbed, perhaps from others, perhaps from your own past experiences, then repeated and amplified by your own identification with them. You ask how to silence it," the master continued, resuming his sweeping. "But silencing an echo is not the true path. An echo dissipates when the original sound fades. The practice is not to fight the voice, for what you resist persists. Instead, it is to change the nature of the sound you project and to observe the echo without attachment." He explained further, weaving in the wisdom of the teachings. In Buddhism, we speak of anatta, the teaching of non-self. This voice, this inner critic, feels so real, so much you. But it is merely a collection of mental formations, impermanent and conditioned. It is not your true intrinsic nature, which is open, vast awareness. When you identify with these critical thoughts, when you believe, "I am worthless," instead of, "I am having the thought that I am worthless," you give them power. You make them solid. The first step is to recognize them for what they are, transient mental events, not fundamental truths about your being. And the Stoics, Master Rohan added, would teach you about the dichotomy of control. We cannot control every thought that arises in our mind, just as we cannot control the weather. Thoughts will come, some pleasant, some unpleasant. But we can control our response to these thoughts, our judgments of them. The inner critic thrives on your judgment and your identification. When it whispers, "You are a failure," your power lies not in arguing with it, but in gently observing it, acknowledging its presence without buying into its narrative. You can say, "Ah, there's that familiar voice again," and then choose not to engage. "But it feels so powerful," Kael interjected, "so convincing." "Its power comes from your belief," the master said kindly. "Think of it as an old, broken record playing the same scratchy tune. If you keep listening intently, you perpetuate its existence. If you simply notice the sound without judgment or engagement, the needle will eventually lift and the silence will return. This is the essence of mindfulness, observing thoughts and feelings as they are, without judgment, without clinging, without pushing away. Forgiveness, too, is key, Master Rohan continued, his gaze drifting to the distant peaks. You seek to silence the critic, but perhaps the deeper need is to forgive the one being criticized, yourself. This voice often arises from past hurts, past mistakes, or the internalized expectations of others. It holds you captive to a past narrative. To forgive yourself is to release yourself from that prison. It's not about condoning past actions, but about acknowledging your humanity, your imperfections, and then choosing to move forward with compassion for yourself. He picked up a smooth, river-worn stone from the steps. Imagine this stone is a heavy burden of self-condemnation. You've carried it for so long, it feels a part of you. Forgiveness is the act of setting it down. It doesn't mean the stone never existed, but you are no longer defined by its weight. How does one forgive oneself? Kyle asked, his voice barely audible. By understanding that the self you are condemning is not fixed, not permanent, Master Rohan replied. The person who made past mistakes is not the same person sitting here now. You are constantly changing, constantly evolving. Compassion for yourself means recognizing that you are doing the best you can with the understanding you have. At any given moment, it means extending the same kindness to yourself that you would offer to a dear friend in pain. When the inner critic speaks, listen to it not as a truth, but as a messenger of unresolved pain or fear. Perhaps it's fear of failure, fear of not being loved, fear of not being enough. Instead of fighting the messenger, inquire into the fear beneath it. What is it truly trying to protect you from? Often, it's a misguided attempt at keeping you safe from perceived harm, even if its methods are cruel. He paused, then offered a practice. Next time the voice arises, instead of fighting it or believing it, simply notice it. Observe its quality, its tone, the words it uses. And then, in your mind, offer it a gentle, compassionate phrase. Perhaps, I hear you, old friend, but I choose peace. Or, thank you for trying to protect me, but I am safe now. Or even, I offer kindness to this part of myself. Do not expect the voice to vanish instantly. It is a deeply ingrained habit. But with consistent practice, its grip will loosen, its volume will decrease, and its echoes will dissipate into the empty space from which they came. Master Rohan then looked at the unfinished cypress on Cal's bench. Your work, Cal, is a reflection of your inner state. When your mind is at war, your hands may struggle. When your mind finds peace, your art will flow with even greater freedom and beauty. True creation comes not from a striving, critical self, but from an open, accepting heart. As Cale walked back to his workshop, the valley seemed to hum with a different kind of silence. The critical echoes had not vanished completely, but they felt distant, less potent. He picked up his tools, no longer seeing the cypress as a challenge to be perfectly conquered, but as a silent partner, waiting patiently for his gentle touch. He began to carve, not with the frenetic energy of one trying to prove himself, but with the quiet reverence of one simply engaging with the wood, allowing his hands to follow their own rhythm, accepting the small imperfections as part of the unique journey of creation. He was learning to listen, not to the echoes, but to the deep, resonant silence that lay beneath them, the true voice of his own unfolding. Story number 3: The River's Unhurried Flow. In a land where the pace of life often felt like a frantic race, Far from the clamor of the cities flowed a river known for its serene, unhurried journey. It meandered through ancient forests, whispered past sleepy villages, and reflected the slow dance of clouds across the sky. Yet by its banks lived a man named Hero, whose inner world was anything but serene. Hero was a craftsman of intricate clocks, each piece a marvel of precision and delicate mechanics. His workshop was a symphony of soft ticks and gentle whirs. But this dedication to perfect order spilled over into every aspect of his life. He meticulously planned his days down to the minute, organized his tools with almost obsessive neatness, and micromanaged every project, every relationship, every small detail of his existence. He believed that control was the key to preventing chaos, to ensuring perfection, to achieving true peace. Yet, despite his relentless efforts, peace eluded him. His friendships often frayed under the weight of his constant directives. His apprentices, though skilled, felt stifled by his inability to delegate or trust their judgment. And within himself, a constant tension simmered, a fear that if he loosened his grip, even for a moment, everything would unravel. He saw life not as a flowing river, but as a complex machine that needed constant, precise calibration, and he was the sole, burdened engineer. He yearned for a deeper connection with the quiet flow of the river outside his window, but its very effortlessness seemed to mock his inner turmoil. One sweltering afternoon, a crucial gear for a complex clock slipped from his grasp, falling into a tiny crevice in the floorboards. Hero's heart pounded. He tried to retrieve it, but his fingers were too thick, the crevice too narrow. Frustration mounted, his breath grew shallow, and a wave of overwhelming anxiety washed over him. He felt utterly out of control. In that moment of desperation, he noticed an old woman with a face like a dried apple and eyes that held the wisdom of many seasons, observing him from the doorway. She was a village elder, known for her quiet insights, often seen sitting by the river, simply watching. "It seems you have dropped something precious, young man," she said, her voice like the gentle rustle of reeds. "A crucial gear," Hero sighed, his shoulders slumped. "And I cannot reach it. My entire day, perhaps my week, is now ruined. My carefully laid plans all undone." The elder stepped inside, her gaze falling not on the crevice, but on the meticulous order of his workshop, then out towards the river flowing past. "You spend your days mastering the precise movements of time," she observed, "yet you struggle with the unpredictable currents of life. Tell me, Hero, do you control the river outside your window?" Hero looked at her, perplexed. "Of course not, Elder. The river flows as it wills." "And does the river fret when a branch falls into its path, or when its waters momentarily swirl around a rock?" she asked. "Does it curse the rain that swells its banks, or lament the sun that evaporates its surface? No, it simply adapts. It flows around the branch, embraces the rock, rises with the rain, and yields to the sun. It trusts its own nature. You, Hero, attempt to make life flow like your perfectly calibrated clocks. But life, like the river, is impermanent, anicca, and constantly changing. It is not a machine to be controlled, but a living, breathing current to be navigated. Your struggle comes from trying to force the river into a straight, predictable channel, rather than learning to dance with its meanders." She continued, drawing from the well of ancient wisdom. "The Buddha taught of letting go, viraga, not of effort, but of attachment to outcome, of the illusion of absolute control. When you cling to the idea that everything must unfold exactly as you planned, you create suffering for yourself. The river knows this. It does not cling to the water that has passed, nor does it grasp at the water yet to come. And the Stoics, she added, would remind you of what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control whether a gear falls, or whether a loved one's actions align with your expectations, or whether the economy shifts. These are external events. What you can control are your perceptions, your judgments, and your responses to these events. Your distress is not caused by the fallen gear, but by your judgment that this event has ruined your plans, and by your desperate need to control it. But if I don't control, things will go wrong, Hiro exclaimed, the fear evident in his voice. Chaos will ensue. The elder smiled gently. Ah, the fear of chaos. But true chaos often arises not from the absence of control, but from the rigidity of attempting to control the uncontrollable. When you grip too tightly, you often break what you hold dear. Look at your relationships, Hiro. Do they flourish under your constant need for them to conform to your expectations? Or do they wither from the lack of space, the absence of trust? Letting go of control, she explained, does not mean abandoning responsibility or effort. It means releasing the anxious attachment to a specific outcome. It means doing your best, then trusting the process and the inherent wisdom of life's flow. It means understanding that sometimes the wrong turn in the river leads to the most beautiful, unexpected vista. She pointed to the crevice. That little gear, perhaps it fell because it was meant to. Perhaps this momentary disruption is an invitation for you to pause, to breathe, to step back from your relentless planning and to find a new way, a more adaptable solution. Or perhaps to simply accept what is for this moment. Consider the concept of mudita, sympathetic joy, the elder suggested. When you attempt to control others, your apprentices, your friends, you rob them of their agency, their chance to learn and grow. And you rob yourself of the joy of witnessing their independent flourishing. True connection thrives in an atmosphere of trust and acceptance, not rigid control. And for your own inner peace, she continued, the practice of equanimity, upekkha, is vital. This means developing a balanced mind, remaining calm and stable amidst life's inevitable ups and downs, without being swayed by attachment or aversion. When you cultivate equanimity, you can observe the river of life, its calm stretches and its rapids, without clinging to the pleasant or resisting the unpleasant. You simply observe and flow. She walked to the window and gazed at the river. The river teaches us that patience and surrender are not weaknesses, but profound strengths. It does not rush, it does not force. It simply flows, carving its path over eons, embracing obstacles as part of its journey. It knows that its destination will be reached not by force, but by persistent, unhurried movement. So, what can you do about the gear? Hiro asked, still focused on the immediate problem, but with a new openness in his voice. The elder picked up a thin, flexible piece of discarded wire from a pile of scraps. Sometimes the solution appears not when you force, but when you allow. This wire, for instance, is not rigid like your tools. It can bend, it can adapt. Perhaps you can fashion a small hook, or use it to dislodge the gear gently. Hiro took the wire, a faint flicker of understanding in his eyes. He slowly bent it, shaping a tiny hook. He lowered it into the crevice, no longer with the frantic desperation of before, but with a quiet, focused attention. He breathed deeply, allowing his shoulders to relax. After a few patient attempts, the hook caught, and with a gentle tug, the small gear was retrieved. He looked at the elder, then at the gear in his hand, then out at the river. A profound sense of release washed over him, not just from the problem of the gear, but from the suffocating grip of his own need for control. The quiet hum of the river outside now seemed to echo within him, a gentle reminder that life, like the river, knew its own way. He realized that true peace wasn't about controlling the flow, but about learning to trust it, to embrace its ceaseless change, and to find his own graceful way to simply be in its unhurried current. His clocks would still be precise, but his heart finally could learn to relax into the beautiful, messy, unpredictable rhythm of life. Story number 4. The Silent Bloom of Forgiveness. In a sun-drenched village nestled at the foot of ancient, craggy mountains stood two houses, side by side, for generations. They belonged to two brothers, elder Kaito and younger Ren, whose families had once been inseparable. But a bitter dispute over a small, fertile plot of land, a boundary line subtly shifting after a great flood, had poisoned their relationship, severing ties that ran deeper than roots. The land was eventually divided, but the invisible chasm between them grew wider and deeper with each passing year. Kaito, the elder, carried his resentment like a heavy cloak. He saw Ren's fence as an affront, Ren's laughter as a taunt, Ren's very existence as a constant reminder of what he felt was a profound betrayal. His days were clouded by anger, his nights disturbed by replays of the arguments, the perceived injustices. This unspoken bitterness seeped into his every interaction, making him gruff with his own children, distant from his wife, and cold towards anyone who mentioned his brother's name. His heart, once open and generous, had hardened into a knot of unyielding stone. He believed forgiving Ren would be a sign of weakness, a surrender to the injustice, and he clung to his anger as a twisted form of self-preservation. Ren, on the other hand, felt a complex mix of guilt and defensive anger. He believed he had acted fairly, yet the undeniable rift pained him. He tried to reach out once or twice, but Kaito's stone wall was impenetrable. Eventually, weariness set in, and Ren too retreated, though a quiet sorrow remained in his heart for the lost camaraderie. The once vibrant family gatherings ceased, replaced by awkward silences and averted gazes when their paths crossed in the village. The silent feud was a blight on the entire community. One crisp winter morning, a traveling monk, known for his serene presence and unusual parables, arrived in the village. He sought shelter at Kaito's home, offering to share stories in exchange for warmth. As days turned into nights, the monk observed the unspoken tension that hung heavy in the air, especially when the subject of Ren arose. One evening, by the flickering hearth, Kaito recounted the story of the land dispute, his voice tight with lingering resentment. "He stole from me, monk," Kaito declared, his jaw clenched. "How can one forgive such a wrong? To forgive is to forget, to condone. It means he wins." The monk listened patiently, his eyes soft. "Tell me, Kaito," he began, his voice like a gentle breeze. "If you hold a burning ember in your hand, intending to throw it at another, who is burned first?" Kaito paused, perplexed. "I am, of course, my own hand." "Precisely," the monk nodded. "Resentment, hatred, unforgiveness, they are like that burning ember. You hold on to them, believing they harm the other, but in truth, they are consuming you from within. They harden your heart, cloud your judgment, and steal your peace. The one you truly punish, Kaito, is yourself." "Forgiveness," the monk continued, "is not about condoning the wrong. It is not about forgetting the pain. And it is certainly not about releasing the other person from accountability. Forgiveness is an act of self-liberation. It is letting go of the ember, not for the sake of the other, but for the sake of your own peace, your own healing. He drew from the deep well of Buddhist teachings. The Buddha taught that clinging to aversion and hatred is a source of immense suffering. When you cling to the past wrong, you are replaying the event over and over, perpetuating the pain. You are trapped in a prison of your own making, with the other person living freely outside. This is the truth of dukkha, suffering arising from attachment. The past cannot be changed, but your relationship to the past can be transformed. And the Stoics, the monk added, would speak of what is within your control. You cannot control Ren's past actions, nor can you force him to apologize or change. These are external, but you can control your response to these events, your inner state, your choice to release the burden of resentment. They would say, the obstacle is the way. Your resentment is the obstacle, and the way through it is not by clinging, but by acceptance of what has already transpired, and then choosing a different path for your own mind. But what about justice? Kaito insisted. What about the wrong he did? Justice, in the earthly sense, may or may not be served, the monk replied. But there is a deeper justice, an internal one. When you hold on to anger, you bind yourself. When you choose to release it, you free yourself. This is the true justice for your own spirit. It's about recognizing that holding on to anger gives the person who harmed you continued power over your emotional well-being. By forgiving, you reclaim that power. Forgiving yourself is often the first step, the monk gently suggested. Perhaps you harbor guilt for how you reacted, or how the situation escalated, or even for feeling this bitterness. Recognize that you did what you thought was best at the time, given your understanding and emotions. Extend compassion to that past self. Say, I forgive myself for clinging to this anger, for allowing it to consume me. I am ready to choose a different path now. He then offered a deeper insight. Often, our inability to forgive others stems from an inability to forgive ourselves for our own imperfections, or from a deep-seated wound that has not healed. When you begin to cultivate metta, loving kindness towards yourself, that compassion naturally extends outward to others. You realize that all beings, like yourself, are imperfect, prone to suffering, and striving in their own ways. This does not excuse harmful actions, but it allows for understanding, for seeing the shared humanity. How does one begin such a monumental task? Kaito asked, a tremor in his voice, the stone in his heart perhaps softening slightly. It begins not with a grand gesture, but with a silent intention, the monk explained. It is a process, not a single event. Start by acknowledging the pain, the anger. Don't suppress it. Then, gently, consciously, make the decision. For my own peace, I choose to release this burden. You don't have to feel it instantly. The feeling follows the intention. Imagine, the monk continued, your heart as a garden. Resentment is like a thorny weed that chokes the life out of everything beautiful. Forgiveness is like pulling that weed, creating space for flowers of peace, joy, and compassion to bloom. This takes effort, persistence, and kindness to oneself. When the memory of the wrong arises, acknowledge it, then gently bring your mind back to your intention. You might say, I remember the pain, but I choose to not suffer from it anymore. I choose peace. He looked at Kaito with profound understanding. Consider Ren, your brother. Perhaps he too carries a burden of sorrow or regret. Holding on to anger prevents any possibility of reconciliation, of healing the family wound. Even if direct reconciliation never happens, the internal act of forgiveness allows you to live without the emotional chains that bind you to the past conflict. The silent bloom of forgiveness, the monk concluded, is the most fragrant and powerful of all. It transforms your inner landscape, no matter what the external circumstances. It is not weak. It is a profound act of spiritual strength. It frees you not just from the other, but from the prison of your own past suffering. It allows you to step into the present moment, unburdened, and to cultivate a future rooted in peace, not resentment. As the monk spoke, Kaito felt a faint stirring within him, a release he hadn't known was possible. The hard knot in his chest seemed to loosen, just a fraction. He looked at the flickering flames in the hearth, no longer seeing his brother's face in the dancing shadows, but his own, lined with years of unnecessary suffering. He realized that the greatest injustice was not what Ren had done to him, but what Kaito had allowed that anger to do to himself. That night, for the first time in years, Kaito slept deeply, undisturbed by the echoes of past grievances. The next morning, as the sun rose, casting long shadows from the ancient mountains, Kaito stepped outside. He looked at Ren's house, not with the familiar bitterness, but with a quiet, spacious sadness for what had been lost, and a nascent, tender hope for what might still be healed. He knew the journey of forgiveness was long, but he had taken the first crucial step, and in that step, a silent bloom had truly begun to unfurl within his own weary heart. Story number 5. Navigating the Labyrinth of Loss. In a coastal village where the rhythm of life was dictated by the ebb and flow of the tides, lived an old fisherman named Takeo. His life was inextricably woven with the sea, its vastness, its bounty, its unpredictable fury. But recently, a different kind of tide had swept through his life, one that left him stranded on the desolate shores of grief. His beloved wife, Hana, his companion of 60 years, had passed away. Hana was the anchor of his world, the gentle light in their small cottage, the quiet laughter that filled their days. Now her absence was a gaping void, an echoing silence that permeated every corner of his existence. Every object in their home, every sunset over the ocean, every cup of tea he brewed served as a poignant reminder of what was no more. The world, once vibrant and full, now felt muted, veiled in a perpetual twilight of sorrow. Takeo believed his life, his very purpose, had ended with hers. He saw loss not as a transition, but as a final, crushing annihilation, a labyrinth with no exit. He found himself endlessly retracing the paths of memory, but each turn led only deeper into despair. He tried to go out on his boat, but the familiar salty air felt heavy. The waves seemed to mock his emptiness. His nets lay unused, his fishing lures untouched. Sleep offered little respite, haunted by dreams of Hana, only to awaken to the stark reality of her absence. His friends from the village, with their kind words and offers of food, seemed to move in a different dimension, one he could no longer access. He felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of sorrow with no compass. One morning, as a thick fog rolled in from the ocean, shrouding the village in a soft, ethereal cloak, Takeo found himself by the shore, staring blankly at the churning gray waters. He heard a gentle cough beside him and turned to see a young woman, a pilgrim with a staff carved from driftwood, standing quietly. Her eyes, the color of the deep sea, held a profound serenity that belied her youth. "The fog has come in thick today," she observed, her voice soft like the mist itself. "It makes the familiar coastline disappear, does it not? Yet the land is still there. It simply cannot be seen." Takeo grunted, his gaze still fixed on the unseen horizon. Some things, once gone, are truly gone, and the world becomes an empty place. Is it empty or simply transformed? The pilgrim asked gently. When the tide recedes, the beach appears empty of water, but it is now teeming with shells, seaweed, and hidden creatures. Loss, too, is a powerful transformation, though often painful beyond measure. She sat beside him on a weathered rock. You navigate a labyrinth, old one, not of walls, but of grief. You believe it has no exit, but every labyrinth, even one built of sorrow, has a way through. It is not about escaping it, but about learning to walk its path with courage and compassion. She sat beside him on a weathered rock. You navigate a labyrinth, old one, not of walls, but of grief. You believe it has no exit, but every labyrinth, even one built of sorrow, has a way through. It is not about escaping it, but about learning to walk its path with courage and compassion. She then shared ancient wisdom, her words flowing like the very tides. In the Buddhist tradition, we understand anicca, impermanence. Everything is in a constant state of flux, birth, growth, decay, and dissolution. To cling to what was, to resist the natural cycle of change, is to invite dukkha, suffering. Loss is the universe's ultimate teacher of impermanence. It strips away our attachments, leaving us raw and exposed, but also open to a deeper truth. And the Stoics, she continued, would urge you to focus on what is within your control. You cannot control the fact of death. It is an inevitable part of life's grand design. But you can control your response to that reality. Your internal judgments, your choice to dwell in despair, or to eventually find a path towards acceptance.
They teach that true misfortune is not the loss itself, but how we choose to interpret and react to it. But the pain is unbearable, Takeo whispered, a tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. It feels like a wound that will never heal. The pain is real, and it must be honored, the pilgrim acknowledged, her voice filled with empathy. Do not rush it away. Allow yourself to feel it without judgment. This is the practice of mindfulness of feelings. Grief is not a linear path. It is a complex tapestry of emotions, sorrow, anger, confusion, even moments of unexpected lightness. Do not criticize yourself for feeling what you feel. Treat yourself with the same metta, loving kindness you would offer to a child who has lost their way. However, she added, while the pain is real, the suffering is often prolonged by clinging to the past, clinging to the idea of how things should be, clinging to the belief that happiness is impossible without what was lost. True healing begins when you acknowledge the reality of the loss, allow the grief its full expression, and then gently, patiently, begin to release the grip of attachment to what can no longer be. How can I ever find anything to be grateful for when such a light has gone out? Takeo asked, his voice raw. Gratitude is not about forgetting the pain, but about remembering the gifts, the pilgrim replied. Think of the countless moments of joy, love, and companionship you shared with Hana. Those moments are not gone. They are woven into the very fabric of who you are. They shaped your heart, enriched your life. The practice of anapanasati, awareness of breath, can help you here. When grief feels overwhelming, simply return to your breath. Anchor yourself in the present moment. With each inhale, receive the life that still flows through you. With each exhale, gently release the tension of clinging. As you walk through this labyrinth, she explained, you may stumble upon memories that feel like sharp thorns. Instead of recoiling, pick them up gently. Hold them, acknowledge the pain, and then place them down again. And as you walk, also look for the small, unexpected flowers, a bird song, the warmth of the sun on your face, a kind word from a neighbor. These are not betrayals of your grief, but whispers of the life that still surrounds you, invitations to find beauty amidst the sorrow. Loss is not an ending of love, the pilgrim concluded, her gaze meeting his. It is a transformation of love. The physical presence may be gone, but the love, the connection, the lessons learned, the memories shared, these remain. They reside within you, a living legacy. Navigating the labyrinth of loss is about discovering how to carry that love forward, not as a burden, but as a source of profound gratitude and enduring connection to the unseen thread that binds all life. It is about understanding that while one door has closed, another, perhaps unseen, is always opening, revealing a path to rebirth and renewed appreciation for the preciousness of every moment. As the pilgrim spoke, the fog around them began to subtly lift, revealing glimpses of the familiar coastline, softened and muted, yet undeniably still there. Takio felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in weeks, a quiet opening in his chest, a gentle warmth, not eradicating his grief, but embracing it within a larger, more expansive sense of being. He looked at the vast gray sea, and for the first time, he saw not only the emptiness of what was lost, but also the enduring, boundless nature of life itself. He knew his journey through grief was far from over, but the pilgrim's words had shown him that the labyrinth was not a trap, but a passage, and that within its depths, the silent bloom of gratitude could, indeed, find its way to light. He picked up his unused fishing net, not to escape the pain, but to weave a new thread of meaning into the ongoing tapestry of his life. Story number 6, The Art of Unknowing. In a secluded monastery high in the mist-shrouded mountains, where ancient texts lined every wall and the air was thick with the scent of old paper and incense, lived a young scholar named Kenji. From a tender age, Kenji had dedicated his life to the relentless pursuit of knowledge. He devoured every scripture, memorized every sutra, and meticulously cataloged every philosophical argument. His mind was a vast, intricate library, capable of recalling countless facts, definitions, and theories. He believed that with enough knowledge, he could understand the universe, master life, and finally find true peace. His greatest fear was the unknown, the uncertain, the possibility that there might be something he didn't grasp, a question he couldn't answer. He sought to know everything. Yet, despite his vast erudition, an unsettling restlessness gnawed at him. The more he learned, the more questions seemed to arise, creating a swirling vortex of doubt rather than the clarity he craved. His heart felt heavy, his mind perpetually fatigued by the sheer weight of information. When confronted with life's profound mysteries, suffering, love, death, his intellectual frameworks seemed to crumble, offering no genuine solace. He felt like a finely tuned instrument, capable of playing complex melodies, but somehow lacking the simple, resonant hum of true understanding. The very act of needing to know all was paradoxically clouding his vision. One crisp autumn morning, a venerable old master, known not for his profound lectures, but for his quiet presence and cryptic responses, arrived at the monastery. Kenji, eager to fill the remaining gaps in his knowledge, approached him with a scroll of intricate questions. "Master," Kenji began, bowing deeply, "I have studied diligently for decades, yet I am still haunted by uncertainty. I seek definitive answers, a complete understanding of existence. How can I finally know all there is to know? The old master, his eyes twinkling like distant stars, simply picked up a single fallen maple leaf from the path. He held it out to Kenji. Tell me, young scholar, do you know this leaf? Kenji, momentarily taken aback by the simple question, began to meticulously describe it. It is a leaf from an Acer palmatum, he recited. Its color is a result of chlorophyll breakdown and anthocyanin production. It is an organ of photosynthesis, composed of epidermal cells, parenchyma, and vascular tissue. Its shape is palmate with 7 lobes. He continued, listing every botanical detail he had learned. The master listened patiently, then gently interrupted. Yes, you know about the leaf. You have cataloged its properties, its functions, its scientific classifications. But do you know the leaf itself? Do you know its journey from a tiny bud to this moment of its falling? Do you know the whisper of the wind that carried it? The unseen roots that nourished its tree? The countless atoms dancing within it? Or the infinite process of its return to the earth? Kenji faltered. I cannot know all of that, master. It is too vast. Precisely, the master smiled. And yet, this is but a single leaf. How then can you expect to know all of existence? The more you try to grasp and define, the more you shrink the boundless mystery into finite categories. True understanding, Kenji, often begins with unknowing, he continued, his voice like the rustling of the wind through the ancient pines, speaking of the core tenets of wisdom. In Buddhism, we speak of emptiness, sunyata, not as a void, but as the inherent lack of fixed, independent existence in all phenomena. Nothing is truly solid or graspable. Your knowledge, your concepts, your definitions, they are all provisional, like fingers pointing at the moon. The moon itself cannot be grasped. When you cling to your knowledge, to your need for definitive answers, you cling to the finger and miss the moon. The Stoics, too, the master added, understood the limits of human knowledge and control. They spoke of amor fati, the love of fate, which includes embracing the inherent uncertainty of life. They taught that worrying about the unknown or demanding certainty is a source of immense internal turmoil. Your peace comes not from having all the answers, but from accepting that you do not need all the answers to live a virtuous and tranquil life. The only thing truly within your control is your judgment and response to what is presented to you, whether known or unknown. But if I don't know, how can I act? Kenji asked, confusion clouding his face. How can I make wise decisions? Knowing about something is not the same as being present with it, the master clarified. You can know every theory of swimming, but until you enter the water and allow yourself to be supported by it, you do not truly know swimming. The art of unknowing is not about abandoning learning, but about releasing the need for complete certainty and intellectual mastery. It is about cultivating beginner's mind, shoshin, approaching each moment with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be surprised, rather than trying to fit it into your existing mental frameworks. The anxiety you feel, the master explained, is often the byproduct of your mind constantly striving to categorize, to control, to predict every variable. It's the exhaustion of a brain perpetually trying to solve an unsolvable puzzle. When you release the need to know, you create space for intuition, for direct experience, for simply being in the moment without the chatter of labels and definitions. This is the path to Pana, wisdom that arises from direct insight, not just accumulated knowledge. Consider your inner critic, the master went on.
It often arises from the fear of not knowing, of making a mistake, of appearing foolish. It says, you must know. If you don't, you are inadequate. But when you embrace the art of unknowing, this critic loses its power. You can gently acknowledge it and say, perhaps I don't know, and that's perfectly all right. There is a profound freedom in not having to have all the answers. He looked at the mist swirling around the mountain peaks. The path of wisdom is not about filling your cup, but about realizing the cup itself is empty, and that this emptiness is its true capacity. It's about letting go of the accumulation and allowing pure awareness to simply be. The greatest insights often arrive in moments of surrender, when the mind quiets its constant striving to know. To truly embrace the art of unknowing, the master concluded, is to cultivate humility, mana, recognizing the vastness of what you do not know and bowing before the mystery of existence. It is to find peace not in certainty, but in the spaciousness of uncertainty. It is to understand that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived, to be experienced, moment by precious moment, without the need for every question to be definitively answered. In that surrender, a deeper, more profound knowing can finally bloom, a knowing that transcends concepts and resonates with the quiet wisdom of your own being. Kenji stood by the master, the maple leaf still gently resting in his palm. He looked at it now, not as an object to be dissected and categorized, but as a silent testament to the vast, incomprehensible dance of life. The fear of not knowing, which had been a constant companion, began to recede, replaced by a sense of liberation, a lightness he had never experienced. He still had his library of knowledge, but now the shelves felt less like a burden and more like a gentle guide. He understood that the deepest wisdom was not found in the answers he accumulated, but in the questions he was willing to hold, and in the profound peace he discovered in the quiet humility of simply not knowing. His journey had just truly begun, not with the acquisition of more, but with the silent, radical act of letting go. Story number 7. The Shadow and the Starlight. In a land of perpetual sunshine, where laughter echoed through emerald valleys and flowers bloomed in riotous color, lived a young artist named Ilara. Her paintings were vibrant, filled with joyous hues and light-filled landscapes. She dedicated her life to capturing beauty, to portraying only the good, the pure, the uplifting. But beneath her radiant exterior, a quiet struggle festered. Ilara secretly harbored what she considered dark emotions. Fleeting pangs of jealousy when another artist's work received more praise. Sharp stabs of fear about her own creative well running dry. And moments of gnawing selfishness when asked to share her time or resources. She saw these feelings as blemishes, ugly stains on her otherwise bright spirit. Ashamed, she pushed them down, denied their existence, and tried to paint over them with forced cheerfulness and diligent acts of kindness. She believed that to acknowledge these shadows was to become them, that embracing them would corrupt her very essence. This constant internal battle left her feeling fragmented, exhausted, and strangely inauthentic, as if a vital part of her remained hidden, unexpressed. One twilight evening, as she sat frustrated before a canvas that refused to come alive, its colors flat and lifeless, she heard a soft knock at her studio door. An old woman stood there, wrapped in a simple dark cloak, her face obscured by shadows, yet her eyes held an ancient, knowing light. She was a wandering storyteller, whispered to have lived in the desolate, forgotten places, understanding the deepest corners of the human heart. You struggle, young artist, the old woman observed, her voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. Your hand seeks the light, but your canvas yearns for depth. For true light to shine, Ilara, there must also be shadow. Ilara, startled, invited her in. I try to banish the shadows from my life, from my art, she confessed, her voice tight. I seek only light, only goodness. But some darkness seems to cling to me, and I fear it. The old woman settled onto a stool, her gaze piercing yet compassionate. Ah, the fear of one's own shadow, she murmured. It is a path many walk, believing that to be whole, one must be purely good. But the universe, Ilara, exists in duality, light and dark, joy and sorrow, creation and destruction. To deny one is to deny the other, and ultimately, to deny the richness of reality itself. She continued, drawing from the wellspring of both Eastern and Western wisdom. In many ancient traditions, particularly certain branches of Buddhism, we speak of Mara, not just as an external tempter, but as the personification of our own internal hindrances, our cravings, aversions, and delusions, which include fear and self-judgment. These are not inherently evil, but aspects of the mind that can lead to suffering if unacknowledged. The path is not to eradicate them, but to observe them with awareness and compassion, understanding their nature and their impermanence. When you push them away, they gain power in the darkness. The Stoics, the old woman added, would teach you about accepting what is. You cannot control the arising of certain emotions or impulses. They are natural phenomena of the human mind, conditioned by evolution and experience. What you can control is your judgment of these emotions and your response to them. When you label jealousy as bad or fear as weak, you create internal conflict.
Instead, observe them without judgment, as mere data. Then choose how to act in alignment with your virtues, regardless of the emotion present. But these feelings are ugly, Alara insisted, unworthy of me. Ugly, the old woman challenged gently, or simply unexamined. Jealousy, for instance, can be a painful emotion, but it can also be a messenger, revealing what you truly value or desire. Fear can paralyze, but it can also be a primal instinct designed to keep you safe, or a signal that you are pushing beyond your comfort zone. Selfishness, in its most basic form, is an instinct for self-preservation, a necessary component of your survival before it becomes distorted. These are not ugly in themselves, but simply raw human experiences. It is your resistance to them, your condemnation of them, that creates the internal ugliness and fragmentation. Imagine your soul as a vast landscape, she proposed. You strive to only illuminate the sunlit fields, but there are also deep valleys, shadowed forests, and hidden caves. These are your shadow aspects. If you deny them, they do not disappear. Instead, they grow in the dark, becoming uncontrolled, often manifesting indirectly through passive aggression, self-sabotage, or even creative blocks, as you are experiencing now. The true artist knows that the deepest shadows contain the most potent secrets, the most profound textures. The practice is not to indulge the shadow, the old woman clarified, but to shine the light of awareness upon it. This is Zen practice, simply sitting with what is, observing your inner landscape without judgment. When jealousy arises, instead of pushing it down, say, "Ah, jealousy is here." Notice where you feel it in your body, how it manifests in your thoughts. Consider the concept of karuna, compassion, she continued. Extend compassion not just to others, but to these difficult parts of yourself.
The part of you that feels jealous is a part that is suffering, perhaps feeling inadequate or insecure. The part that feels selfish might be feeling depleted or overwhelmed. These are not enemies to be vanquished, but wounded aspects seeking your understanding and healing. True strength, the old woman concluded, lies not in pretending you are pure light, but in embracing your entirety, your light and your shadow. For it is in the full spectrum of your being that your deepest well of creativity and compassion resides. The starlight only truly glimmers against the velvet backdrop of night. When you acknowledge and integrate your shadows, they cease to be monsters and instead become sources of profound insight, empathy, and unique power. They reveal your humanity, your complexity, and ultimately, the boundless capacity of your heart to hold all of who you are without judgment and to shine even brighter. As the old woman spoke, Ilara looked at her canvas. The vibrant colors she had meticulously applied now seemed flat, lacking resonance. She picked up a charcoal stick, an instrument she rarely used, fearing its dark marks. With a deep breath, she began to sketch a deep, sweeping shadow across the corner of her landscape, then another, adding depth and contrast. And as she worked, something shifted within her. The tension eased, and a new, exhilarating sense of authenticity filled her. The canvas began to breathe, and the light she had struggled to capture now shone with a newfound brilliance, precisely because it was juxtaposed against the rich, embracing darkness. She was no longer afraid of the shadows, for she understood that they were not an absence of light, but an essential part of its profound beauty and of her own deepest truth. Story number 8, The Weight of Unspoken Words. In a bustling city where towering buildings pierced the sky and the constant hum of traffic filled the air, lived a young architect named Hiroshi. His designs were innovative, his structures bold and visionary. Yet beneath his calm and professional demeanor, Hiroshi carried a secret burden, a deep-seated resentment towards his estranged father. Their last conversation, years ago, had erupted into a fiery argument over Hiroshi's choice of career, a path his father had vehemently disapproved of, seeing it as less practical than the family business. Since then, a thick, impenetrable silence had fallen between them, a chasm widened by pride and unspoken accusations. This unresolved conflict, though unvoiced, manifested in subtle, insidious ways in Hiroshi's life. He found himself avoiding difficult conversations at work, fearing confrontation. He sometimes projected his father's critical voice onto his superiors, leading to unnecessary anxiety. In his personal relationships, he struggled to express his true feelings, often withdrawing or becoming overly compliant to avoid any hint of disagreement. The unspoken words, the unforgiven past, felt like an invisible weight pressing down on his chest, preventing him from fully grieving, fully connecting. He longed for inner freedom, but the chains of his past felt unbreakable. One sweltering summer afternoon, while overseeing a construction site, Hiroshi received news that his father had suffered a sudden, serious illness. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over him: alarm, concern, but also a sharp pang of the old bitterness. He felt compelled to visit, yet paralyzed by the years of unspoken words and the fear of rekindling the old pain. Lost in his thoughts, he wandered to a small, neglected temple hidden amidst the skyscrapers. Inside, an old monk was meticulously cleaning a dusty statue of the Buddha, his movements slow and mindful. Hiroshi, seeking solace, spoke to the monk about his predicament, pouring out the story of his resentment, his father's disapproval, and the crushing weight of their silence. The monk listened, his face serene. "Ah, the burden of unspoken words," he said, his voice soft like the rustle of prayer flags. "It is a peculiar weight, is it not? You think it is the words themselves that are heavy, but often it is the unwillingness to release them, either through expression or through acceptance, that creates the true burden." He paused, then continued, drawing from the profound wisdom of the Dhamma. The Buddha taught that hatred never ceases by hatred. By love alone does hatred cease. This is an eternal law. When you hold on to resentment, you are perpetuating a cycle of suffering, not just for the other person, but primarily for yourself. The anger and bitterness you carry do not harm your father. They erode your own peace, your own joy. This is the essence of dukkha, suffering caused by clinging to aversion. The Stoics, the monk added, would remind you to focus on what is within your control. You cannot control your father's past opinions, nor can you dictate his illness or how he might react if you speak to him. These are external events. What you can control are your perceptions, your judgments, and your actions in this present moment. Holding on to resentment is a choice you make day after day. Releasing it is also a choice, one that offers profound freedom. "But if I speak, it might lead to more pain," Hiroshi countered, his voice betraying his fear. "What if he rejects me again? What if nothing changes?" "That is the fear of future suffering, a projection of the mind," the monk gently corrected. "You cannot know the outcome. You can only choose your action based on wisdom and compassion, free from attachment to a specific result. The act of speaking or attempting to connect, when done with a pure heart, is its own reward. It is an act of courage, an act of metta, loving kindness towards yourself and potentially towards your father." Sometimes, the monk continued, the unspoken words are not meant to be spoken aloud to the other person, but to be acknowledged and released within yourself. Perhaps the resentment is a manifestation of unfulfilled expectations, or a need for validation that you can only truly give yourself. The journey of forgiveness often begins not with the other, but with a deep acceptance of your own feelings and a conscious decision to release the emotional chains that bind you to the past. Consider the idea of impermanence, anicca, the monk suggested. The person your father was, the person you were during that argument, they are not fixed entities. Every moment brings change. Holding on to a past version of your father or a past wound prevents you from seeing the person he is now or the person he might become. It also prevents you from recognizing your own growth. "The burden of unspoken words," he explained, "is often the burden of unprocessed emotions. When anger, hurt, or disappointment are not acknowledged, they fester. They create inner tension. The practice is to sit with these emotions, to allow them to be present without judgment, and to observe them with mindfulness. Just as you observe the sounds of the city, observe the feelings in your body and the thoughts in your mind. Don't fight them, simply notice them. In that gentle observation, they begin to lose their intensity and transform." "And what if forgiveness feels impossible?" Hiroshi asked, doubt creeping in. "Forgiveness is not a single grand act, but a gradual unfolding," the monk replied. "It often begins with a quiet wish for your own peace. Then, perhaps, a wish for the other person's peace, even if you don't feel it immediately. It's about recognizing that both of you are suffering, albeit in different ways. It's about choosing compassion over condemnation." He looked directly at Hiroshi. "Whether you speak to your father or not, the decision to release the weight of unspoken words rests within you. You can offer compassion to yourself for the pain you've carried. You can offer understanding that your father, like all beings, is imperfect, and likely acted from his own conditioning or fears. This doesn't excuse his actions, but it frees you from being bound by them. The true freedom, the monk concluded, comes from understanding that the past is a story that has already been written. You cannot change its chapters, but you can choose not to carry its heavy volume with you into every new day.
Release the weight, Hiroshi, not for him, but for the clarity of your own breath, for the lightness of your own step, for the freedom of your own heart to build a future unburdened by the echoes of the past. For when you release the unspoken words, you allow your own true voice to finally emerge, clear and strong. As the monk finished speaking, Hiroshi felt a profound shift within him. The knot in his chest began to loosen, the invisible weight to lighten. He still didn't know what his visit to his father would bring, but the fear was now intertwined with a sense of quiet determination, a choice to act not from obligation or lingering resentment, but from a newfound desire for his own peace and an open heart. He walked out of the temple, not towards a conversation he had to have, but towards a potential healing he was finally ready to embrace for himself. The city's hum still filled the air, but now Hiroshi could hear the silent symphony of his own breath guiding him forward. Story number 9, The Unfolding of the Tight Bud. In a meticulously ordered garden, where every rosebush was pruned to perfection and every pebble precisely placed, lived a young gardener named Anya. She prided herself on her ability to control every aspect of her vibrant landscape. Her greatest passion, however, was for the camellia bush at the garden's heart. Its buds, tight and green, promised a magnificent bloom, and Anya watched them with an almost obsessive anticipation. She would check them daily, gently touching them, sometimes even attempting to subtly coax them open, convinced that her meticulous care and foresight were the only way to ensure their perfect unfolding. Yet, despite her tireless efforts, the camellia buds seemed stubbornly resistant. They remained tightly closed, even as other flowers around them burst forth in exuberant displays. Anya grew increasingly anxious. She researched every possible variable: soil pH, light exposure, nutrient levels, adjusting each with frantic precision. She believed that if she could just find the right combination, the perfect method, she could force the buds to open on her schedule, to fulfill their potential as she envisioned it. This desperate need to control the natural process, to accelerate what she felt was too slow, left her perpetually stressed, her joy in the garden overshadowed by a simmering frustration. She yearned for the beauty of the bloom, but her grasping desire paradoxically kept it at bay. One afternoon, as a gentle spring rain began to fall, Anya sat despondently by the camellia bush, feeling defeated. An old woman, her face wrinkled like ancient bark, her movements slow and deliberate, passed by. She was the village's oldest resident, renowned for her quiet wisdom and her profound connection to the cycles of nature. "The rain nourishes," the old woman observed, her voice like water trickling over stones. Anya sighed. "These buds, elder, they refuse to open. I have done everything, yet they remain closed. I fear they never will." The elder looked at the tight buds, then at Anya's strained face. "You wish to control the unfolding, do you not?" she asked gently. "You wish to command the flower to bloom on your timetable, by your will?" "But I want it to be perfect," Anya exclaimed. "I want it to reach its full beauty." "And so it will," the old woman replied, "in its own perfect time." Your desire for control, young Anya, is like trying to make the sun rise faster or the moon appear sooner. It is a struggle against the inherent wisdom of the natural world,
and indeed, against the inherent wisdom of your own life's unfolding. She continued, drawing from the deep well of ancient teachings. In Buddhism, we speak of dukkha, suffering, arising from tanha, craving or grasping. You are grasping for the bloom, for a specific outcome, on a specific schedule. This grasping creates your anxiety. The bud itself is not suffering, it is simply being. Its unfolding is a process, not an event that can be rushed. When you cling to a particular outcome, or to the illusion of being able to control every variable, you create your own distress. The path is to let go of the grasping, to trust the natural unfolding. The Stoics, the old woman added, would speak of the dichotomy of control with profound clarity. They would ask, is the opening of this bud within your control? You can provide the optimal conditions, the water, the soil, the light. These are your actions within your control. But the timing of the bloom, the act of opening itself, that is nature's domain, beyond your direct command. When you attempt to control what is outside your sphere of influence, you invite frustration and despair. True tranquility arises from accepting what cannot be changed and focusing your energy on what truly is within your power, your present effort, and your internal response. But what if it never opens? Anya worried aloud, her fear evident. Ah, the fear of what might happen, the elder nodded. That is the mind projecting into an uncertain future. The bud is here, now.
Its potential is here, now. Your anxiety about its future opening robs you of the peace of this present moment and the simple beauty of observing the process. This is where mindfulness becomes your greatest ally. Bring your attention back to the breath, to the sensation of the rain, to the quiet presence of the bud itself, without the story of what it should be doing. The concept of equanimity, upekkha, is crucial here, she explained. It is the ability to remain balanced and calm, unaffected by gain or loss, praise or blame, pleasure or pain, or, in your case, by the bud opening or remaining closed. It is understanding that the nature of things is to unfold in their own way, and our peace comes from accepting that reality, not from trying to bend it to our will. This doesn't mean you don't care, but that your caring isn't intertwined with desperate craving. Every living thing, the old woman continued, has its own innate rhythm, its own wisdom. A child cannot be forced to walk before their legs are ready. A river cannot be forced to run faster than its current allows. And a bud cannot be forced to open before its inner wisdom signals the time is right. Your task is not to command, but to tend with loving care and profound trust. What you are seeking to control, she looked deeply at Anya, is not just the bud, but perhaps your own life's unfolding. Are you rushing yourself? Are you pushing yourself to achieve things before you are truly ready? Are you judging your own pace, comparing it to others? The bud is a mirror, reflecting your own inner struggle with acceptance and patience. The true art of gardening, the elder concluded, is not about forceful control, but about cultivating the conditions for flourishing and then trusting the inherent intelligence of life. It is about understanding that while you can offer love and care, the actual process of growth and transformation belongs to life itself. When you release your tight grip, when you surrender to the natural rhythm, the bud does not become less beautiful. Instead, it unfolds in its own time, with a silent, breathtaking grace that no amount of force could ever achieve. And in that surrender, you too will find your own inner bloom, unhurried and perfect. As the old woman spoke, Anya looked down at the camellia bud. She saw it not as a challenge, but as a small, tenacious life, perfectly capable of its own journey.
she noticed the tiny drops of rain clinging to its waxy surface, each reflecting the soft light. She inhaled deeply, and for the first time felt the tension in her shoulders ease. She realized that her anxiety was not helping the bud, but only hurting herself. Slowly, gently, she withdrew her hand, no longer seeking to force, but simply to witness. The camellia bud remained closed, but in that moment of profound surrender, something within Anya herself began to quietly, gently unfold. The true beauty of the garden, she now understood, lay not in her control, but in her respectful, patient surrender to its inherent, miraculous, unhurried flow. Story number 10. The Unseen Roots of Conflict. In a small, bustling town known for its lively market, two prominent families, the Tanakas and the Satos, had been locked in a bitter feud for generations. The initial spark was a distant memory, a vague tale of a disputed irrigation ditch long ago.
But over time, this ember of disagreement had been fanned by countless small slights, whispered rumors, and perceived injustices, growing into a raging fire of animosity. The children were taught to mistrust, the adults to avoid, and any interaction between the families was fraught with tension, often erupting into sharp words or cold stares. Their lives were consumed by this conflict, yet they rarely understood the deeper, unseen roots that fed its persistent growth. A young woman named Akari, a member of the Tanaka family, felt particularly burdened by this ongoing strife. She saw the toll it took on her parents, the way it limited their lives and opportunities. She yearned for peace, for a time when the community could truly thrive together. However, every attempt she made to bridge the gap was met with suspicion from her own family and coldness from the Satos. She felt helpless, caught in a historical narrative she hadn't created but was forced to live within. The conflict felt like an impenetrable wall, and her heart ached with the weight of its futility. One late afternoon, Akari sought solace in the quiet contemplation garden of an old, neglected temple on the outskirts of town. There, she found a frail, elderly monk carefully tending to a single, ancient bonsai tree. Its gnarled roots, exposed above the soil, spoke of centuries of silent struggle and growth. Akari approached him, her voice filled with despair. "Venerable one," she began, "my family and another in this town have been in conflict for as long as anyone can remember. It consumes us. We believe they are wrong, they believe we are. There seems to be no end, no resolution. How can such a deep-seated conflict ever be overcome?" The monk looked up from the bonsai, his gaze gentle. "Ah, the visible fruits of unseen roots," he murmured. "You see the conflict, the arguments, the animosity, but these are merely the branches and leaves. To understand, to truly heal, one must look to the roots." He gestured to the bonsai. "This tree, Akari, has grown through many seasons. Its branches reach for the light, but its very existence depends on its roots, hidden beneath the surface. So it is with conflict. What you see on the surface, the accusations, the anger, are often fueled by deeper, unseen roots. Fear, misunderstanding, unacknowledged pain, and the relentless grip of identification with a narrative. In the Buddhist teachings, the monk continued, we speak of the three poisons: greed, lobha, hatred, dosa, and delusion, mohana. Conflict, especially long-standing conflict, often has these poisons at its core. Greed for land, for reputation, for a perceived win. Hatred, which you experience so acutely, festering and growing. And most importantly, delusion. The delusion that I am right, they are wrong.
The delusion that holding on to the past will somehow bring justice. The delusion that the other is fundamentally different or evil. The Stoics, he added, would teach you about the power of perception and judgment. The actual events of the past, the disputed ditch, are neutral facts. It is the meaning you and the other family have assigned to those facts, the judgments you have made about them, and the narratives you have clung to that have perpetuated the conflict. When you internalize they are our enemies, you create that reality within yourself. The Stoics would advise you to examine these judgments. Are they serving your well-being, or are they binding you to suffering? But the injustice was real, Akari insisted, and their actions are truly harmful. The harm may be real, the monk acknowledged, but holding on to the anger about it perpetuates your own suffering. The first step is to recognize that the other family, like your own, is likely acting from their own conditioning, their own fears, their own inherited narratives. They are also, like all beings, seeking to avoid suffering and find some measure of happiness, however misguided their methods might be. This is not to excuse their actions, but to understand the shared humanity and the shared vulnerability to the poisons of the mind. To approach such a conflict, he explained, one must cultivate metta, loving-kindness, and karuna, compassion, first for oneself and then for the other. When you are consumed by anger and judgment, your own mind is turbulent. Begin by wishing yourself well, wishing yourself peace. Then gently extend that wish to the other family, not condoning their actions, but wishing for their release from the suffering that drives their behavior. This doesn't mean you become their friend overnight, but it begins to soften the hard edges of your own heart. Consider also the idea of impermanence, anicca, the monk continued. The conflict you see today is not static. It is a flowing river of interactions, interpretations, and reactions. If you continue to pour the water of old grievances into it, it will continue to rage. But if you begin to introduce the calming waters of understanding, patience, and non-reactivity, the river can slowly change its course. The unseen roots of conflict, he said, touching the gnarled roots of the bonsai, often lie in a lack of genuine listening, an unwillingness to step into the other's perspective even if you don't agree with it. It lies in attachment to being right and the fear of losing face. True strength is not in clinging to your position, but in the courage to release your attachment to it, to open to the possibility of a shared solution. And what if the other side refuses to change? Akari asked, a hint of resignation in her voice. You cannot control their actions, only your own, the monk replied firmly. But when one side begins to change its internal landscape, to release the anger, to cultivate understanding, to act from wisdom rather than reaction, it invariably shifts the dynamic. A single gentle breeze can alter the course of a flag. Your internal transformation can, and often does, create ripples that extend outward, inviting a different response, even if only subtly. The healing of the conflict begins within your own heart. The path to overcoming such deep-seated conflict, the monk concluded, is not about winning, but about dissolving the very conditions that perpetuate the battle. It is about recognizing the shared human condition, the shared susceptibility to suffering, and choosing a path of wisdom and compassion over one of anger and delusion. It is about understanding that the peace you seek in your town must first bloom in the garden of your own heart. For when you tend to your own unseen roots, the branches of the conflict begin to wither, and the quiet bloom of reconciliation, or at least your own profound peace, can finally emerge. As the monk finished speaking, Akari felt a profound sense of clarity. She looked at the bonsai, not just at its sturdy trunk, but at its intricate roots, recognizing how deeply they intertwined beneath the earth.
She realized that the solution to the conflict lay not in winning arguments, but in dissolving the very soil of resentment that fed them. She didn't know what the future held for the Tanaka and Sato families, but she knew that her own heart was no longer bound by the bitter fruit of the past. With a newfound resolve, she stood up, ready to begin the long, patient work of tending to the unseen roots within herself, believing that in her own transformation lay the truest hope for peace in her troubled town. Story number 11. The Cracked Vase and the Practice of Wabi-Sabi. In a serene tea house, nestled beside a whispering bamboo grove, lived a master of the tea ceremony named Haruki. His tea house was renowned for its exquisite collection of porcelain vases, each one a testament to perfect craftsmanship, flawless in form and glaze. Haruki meticulously cared for these vases, polishing them daily, ensuring they remained pristine. He believed true beauty resided only in perfection, and he strived for this ideal in every aspect of his life, from the precise pouring of tea to the harmonious arrangement of flowers. His greatest fear was imperfection, anything that marred the pure, unblemished surface of things. One crisp morning, while preparing for a special ceremony, Haruki accidentally knocked his most cherished vase, a priceless Ming Dynasty piece, from its pedestal. It fell to the polished wooden floor with a sickening shatter, breaking into several large fragments. A wave of despair washed over him. The vase was ruined, its perfection irrevocably lost. He felt as if a part of his own soul had shattered with it. He gazed at the broken pieces, his heart heavy with regret and a profound sense of loss, convinced that its beauty was gone forever. The idea of embracing its brokenness was alien to him. Just then, his old mentor, Master Zenji, arrived for the ceremony. Master Zenji, whose face was lined with a lifetime of wisdom and compassion, silently observed Haruki's distress and the shattered vase. "Ah, a moment of profound transformation," Master Zenji said, his voice as calm as a still pond. "You see ruin, Haruki, but I see an opportunity for wabi-sabi." Haruki looked up, confused. "Wabi-sabi, Master? The vase is broken. Its perfection is gone." Master Zenji knelt and gently picked up a fragment. "Wabi-sabi, my dear Haruki, is the ancient art of finding beauty in imperfection, of accepting the transient and the incomplete. It is the wisdom that true beauty is not found in pristine flawlessness, but in the authenticity of age, the grace of wear, and the narrative of lived experience, including brokenness." He continued, drawing from the deep well of Zen philosophy. "In Zen, we understand anicca, impermanence. Nothing is static, nothing lasts forever in its original form. Every moment, every object is in a constant state of flux. To resist this truth, to cling to the illusion of perpetual perfection, is to invite dukkha, suffering. The vase, in its pristine state, was beautiful, but now, in its brokenness, it reveals a deeper truth about existence, its fragility, its susceptibility to change, and its capacity for transformation. The Stoics," Master Zenji added, "would teach you about accepting what is and the dichotomy of control. You could not control the accident, nor can you unbreak the vase. These are external events. What you can control is your perception of this event and your response to it. To label it as ruined is a judgment that blinds you to a different kind of beauty, a different kind of wisdom. The Stoic path is to find peace not in what happens, but in your attitude towards what happens." "But how can something broken be beautiful?" Haruki asked, still struggling with the concept. "Consider the practice of kintsugi,
Master Zenji explained, his eyes softening. It is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer, dusted or mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. The philosophy is to treat breakage and repair as part of the history of an object, rather than something to disguise. The cracks are not hidden. They are illuminated, celebrated. The object becomes even more unique, more beautiful, more resonant because of its journey, because of its scars. Your reluctance to accept imperfection, the master gently probed, is perhaps reflected in your own life, is it not? Do you judge your own perceived flaws harshly? Do you strive for an impossible perfection in yourself and others, leading to constant anxiety and disappointment? Haruki nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in his mentor's words. The cracked vase, Master Zenji continued, is a powerful metaphor for life itself and for the human spirit. We all experience cracks, moments of loss, disappointment, failure, illness, or heartbreak. If we view these cracks as definitive ruin, we deny our own resilience, our capacity for healing and growth. But if we can embrace these experiences, see them as part of our unique story, as layers of gold that make us richer and more profound, then we truly begin to live with authenticity and grace. This is not about being complacent with mediocrity, he clarified. It is about releasing the tyranny of an unattainable ideal of perfection. It is about understanding that true strength often emerges from vulnerability, and true beauty from acceptance of what is, including the imperfect nature of reality. The practice is mindfulness, sati, Master Zenji concluded. When a crack appears in your life, whether in an object or in your own experience, do not immediately recoil or judge. Instead, pause, observe the crack, acknowledge its presence, breathe into the discomfort, and then gently ask yourself, what can this imperfection teach me? What new form of beauty or strength can emerge from this breakage? Just as the kintsugi artist honors the cracks with gold, you can honor your own challenges with compassion and wisdom. For it is in these very imperfections, these cracked moments, that the most profound and authentic beauty of your existence truly shines through, like starlight through a crack in the ceiling. Master Zenji then gathered the fragments of the Ming vase. Let us repair this together, Haruki, not to hide its past, but to illuminate it, to transform it. Let us learn from its brokenness and allow it to teach us the profound beauty that lies beyond the illusion of perfection. As they began the slow, meditative process of mending the vase with shimmering gold lacquer, Haruki felt a profound shift within him. The despair began to recede, replaced by a quiet sense of awe. He looked at the fragments, no longer seeing ruin, but seeing possibility, a new narrative unfolding. The vase, once a symbol of rigid perfection, was now becoming a testament to resilience, to the quiet dignity of transformation, and to the profound, authentic beauty found only in the acceptance of life's inevitable cracks. And in that acceptance, a gentle peace, more profound than any he had known, bloomed in his own imperfect heart. Story number 12. The unseen anchor of anxiety. In a modern metropolis where life moved at a dizzying pace and constant connectivity buzzed through the air, lived a brilliant young programmer named Kenzo. His mind was a marvel, capable of untangling complex algorithms and crafting elegant code. Yet, beneath his calm exterior, a relentless current of anxiety pulled at him. It wasn't a sudden storm, but a persistent undertow. A vague unease about deadlines, a tremor of fear about future failures, an incessant need to check and recheck his work, even when he knew it was flawless. He often felt a tight knot in his stomach, a racing heart, and a mind perpetually anticipating the next potential problem. He was constantly striving for perfection, believing that if he could just anticipate every pitfall, he could finally eradicate this lurking dread. The irony was, his very effort to control the unknown fueled his internal disquiet. Kenzo spent his nights scrolling through endless news feeds, researching every possible global crisis, every potential economic downturn, every health scare. He believed that if he was informed enough, he could be prepared enough, and thus safe enough. But the more information he consumed, the larger the shadow of anxiety grew, transforming from a personal tremor into a vast, shapeless monster lurking just beyond the edge of his vision. He yearned for a sense of solid ground, but felt perpetually adrift on a sea of what-ifs. One evening, exhausted from another day of battling his inner demons, Kenzo wandered into a quiet urban park, an unexpected pocket of green amidst the concrete. There, an old homeless man sat on a bench, meticulously mending a worn fishing net, his movements slow and rhythmic. The man's face was etched with a lifetime of experiences, but his eyes held a profound, unshakable calm. Kenzo, drawn by the man's serene presence, hesitantly approached him. "Sir," he began, his voice betraying his weariness, "my mind is a constant battlefield of worries. I am always anxious about the future, about things I cannot control. How can I find peace when the world feels so uncertain and dangerous?" The old man looked up from his net, his hands continuing their steady work. "Ah, the search for an anchor in a restless sea," he said, his voice raspy but kind. "You seek to control the waves, young one, but true peace comes from finding the anchor within your own boat, not in calming the ocean." He gestured to the park around them. "Look at these trees. Do they worry about the coming winter? Do they fret about whether their leaves will return in spring? No. They simply stand, rooted in the earth, adapting to the seasons. Your anxiety, Kenzo, is often the result of your mind trying to grasp and control what is inherently uncontrollable: the future, other people's actions, and the vast, unpredictable flow of life. In the teachings," the old man continued, "we speak of impermanence, anicca, and non-self, anatta. The future you worry about is merely a mental construct, a projection. It does not exist now. And the self that feels so vulnerable to these future threats is not a fixed, solid entity, but a constantly changing thoughts and feelings. When you cling to the illusion of a solid self that needs absolute security, you create the very anxiety you seek to escape. The past is gone, the future is not yet here. Only this present moment exists." The Stoics, he added, would speak of the dichotomy of control with stark clarity. They would say, "Is this future event within your direct power? If not, then worrying about it is an act of folly that only harms your present peace. Your anxiety is not caused by the external uncertainties of life, but by your judgments and interpretations of those uncertainties. The event itself is neutral. Your fear is your reaction to it. The path to tranquility is to distinguish what you can control, your thoughts, actions, values, from what you cannot, and then wisely focus your energy only on the former." "But how do I stop my mind from jumping to the worst-case scenario?" Kenzo asked, frustration in his voice. "That is the nature of the conditioned mind," the old man nodded. "It is a habit, like a well-worn path. You cannot simply command it to stop, but you can learn to observe it without engagement. This is the core of mindfulness, sati. When a fearful thought arises, what if I fail? Do not follow it down the rabbit hole. Simply notice it. Ah, a thought of failure. Interesting. Observe it like a cloud passing in the sky. Do not judge it, do not cling to it, do not push it away. Just observe. In that observation, its power over you diminishes. Anxiety often disguises itself as helpfulness, the old man continued. It says, I am warning you, I am protecting you. But it is a false protector. True preparedness comes from calm, clear planning in the present, not from frantic worrying about what might happen. The root of much anxiety is often a fear of pain or discomfort, a resistance to the natural ups and downs of life. But pain is an inevitable part of human existence. When you cultivate equanimity, upekkha, a balanced mind, you learn to meet both pleasant and unpleasant experiences with an inner calm, understanding that they too will pass. Consider the inner critic that often fuels anxiety, he added. It whispers, you're not doing enough, you're not smart enough, you're not prepared enough. This critic is merely an echo of past conditioning. It is not your true self. By practicing self-compassion, metta, by treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a struggling friend, you can begin to soften the harshness of this inner voice. Recognize that you are doing your best and that anxiety is a human experience, not a personal failing. The unseen anchor of anxiety, the old man concluded, is often your own attachment to certainty and control, and your resistance to life as it is. True peace isn't the absence of uncertainty. It is the ability to dance with uncertainty with an open heart. It is understanding that you are not powerless, but your power lies not in controlling external events, but in mastering your inner landscape. For when you find that anchor within, deep in the present moment, rooted in acceptance and compassion for yourself, then the restless waves of anxiety may still rise and fall, but your boat will remain steady, unwavering, and profoundly at peace. As the old man spoke, Kenzo felt a profound sense of lightness. The knot in his stomach hadn't vanished entirely, but it felt looser, less constricting. He looked at the fishing net, its intricate knots and threads, and understood that life, like the net, was woven with many interconnected strands, some strong, some frayed, some seen, some unseen. He realized that his strength wasn't in trying to control every thread, but in patiently mending his own internal state, one mindful breath at a time. The city's hum still surrounded him, but now Kenzo could discern a deeper, quieter rhythm within himself, an unseen anchor finally finding its purchase in the turbulent waters of his mind. Story number 13, The Fading Echo of FOMO. In a vibrant, hyper-connected city perpetually bathed in the glow of screens, lived a young social media influencer named Maya. Her life was a meticulously curated tapestry of exciting events, exotic travels, and glamorous gatherings, all broadcast to her millions of followers. On the surface, she embodied the very essence of modern success and perpetual joy. Yet, beneath this glittering facade, a gnawing anxiety consumed her. It was the relentless, insidious feeling of FOMO, the fear of missing out. Every notification, every new post from a fellow influencer, every trending event she wasn't at, sent a fresh jolt of dread through her. She constantly compared her life to the seemingly perfect highlight reels of others, convinced that somewhere, someone was having a more authentic, more thrilling experience than she was. This compelled her to chase every opportunity, to attend every gathering, even when exhausted, empty, or simply yearning for quiet. She lived in a perpetual state of scattered attention, unable to fully inhabit any single moment because her mind was always scanning for what might be happening elsewhere. Her peace was held hostage by the endless stream of perceived alternatives, and she felt like she was constantly running, yet never truly arriving. One quiet Sunday morning, unusually disconnected after a rare phone battery failure, Maya wandered into an old, forgotten public library, drawn by the stillness. There, nestled amongst dusty tomes, sat an elderly librarian, her spectacles perched on her nose, seemingly lost in a handwritten manuscript. Her presence radiated a quiet contentment that deeply intrigued Maya. Hesitantly, Maya approached her. "Excuse me," she began, her voice softer than usual. "I live in a constant state of agitation. My mind is always racing, fearing I'm not doing enough, not experiencing enough, always worried I'm missing out on something better. How can one find peace in a world that never stops moving?" The librarian looked up, her eyes gentle and knowing. "Ah, the illusion of omnipresence," she said. "You chase every wave on the ocean, believing you must catch them all. But the ocean, young one, is boundless, and your boat, no matter how swift, can only be in one place at a time. The fear of missing out, Maya, is often the fear of missing the now." She continued, drawing from ancient wisdom. "In Buddhist teachings, we speak of dukkha, suffering, arising from tanha, craving or grasping, specifically from attachment to sensory experiences and mental formations. When you constantly crave the next best thing or cling to the idea of an idealized external experience, you create your own dissatisfaction. The present moment, which is all you ever truly have, becomes a mere stepping stone, never fully appreciated. You are missing out on the very life you are living." The Stoics, the librarian added, would teach you about control and acceptance. You cannot control what others are doing or what events are unfolding in countless places across the world. These are external and beyond your direct influence. What you can control are your attention, your judgments, and your choices in this very moment. When you choose to compare your experience to others, when you judge your current reality as not enough, you create your own inner turmoil. The Stoic path is to cultivate contentment with what is available to you right now, and to wisely direct your focus to what truly matters. "But if I don't keep up, I'll be left behind," Maya argued, the familiar anxiety stirring. "My career, my influence, it all depends on staying relevant." "Relevant to whom?" the librarian gently challenged. "And at what cost to your inner peace?" True relevance is not found in external validation, but in living authentically, in being fully present with your own unique journey. The constant comparison you engage in is a form of envy, a poison that corrodes your own joy. It feeds the illusion that someone else's highlight reel is their full reality, forgetting the unseen struggles that every human faces. The antidote to FOMO, she explained, is not to attend more events, but to cultivate JOMO, the joy of missing out. This means consciously choosing to be present where you are, with whom you are, or simply with yourself. It is the radical act of saying, "This is enough. I am enough. This moment is enough." It is about reclaiming your attention, which is your most precious currency. Practice mindfulness, sati, the librarian suggested. When you feel that familiar pang of anxiety from seeing a social media post, pause. Don't immediately react. Notice the feeling in your body. Observe the thought, "I'm missing out." Then gently bring your awareness back to your breath, to your surroundings. Ask yourself, what is truly present for me right now? What can I engage with fully, without distraction? Engage with your work, with a book, with a conversation, with your own quiet solitude, with your whole being. And cultivate metta, loving kindness, for yourself, she concluded. Recognize that this fear is a form of suffering. Treat yourself with compassion. You are not a machine designed for endless consumption of experience. You are a human being, needing rest, reflection, and quiet solitude to truly flourish. The world will always be buzzing, Maya, but your peace is not found by chasing every buzz, but by tuning in to the quiet hum of your own inner being. For when you truly arrive in the present moment, you realize you were never truly missing out on anything that genuinely mattered. All the richness, all the fullness is right here, waiting to be deeply experienced. As the librarian spoke, Maya felt an unusual stillness settle within her. The familiar buzz of her phone, now silent, no longer felt like an urgent call to action, but a gentle permission to simply be. She looked around the library, at the silent rows of books, each a world waiting to be explored, yet none demanding her immediate fragmented attention. She realized that the constant pursuit of external stimulation had robbed her of the simple, profound joy of internal connection. The fear of missing out began to fade, replaced by a nascent, quiet joy of being right where she was, truly present for the first time in a very long time. The world outside would continue to spin, but Maya had found her own still point, an inner anchor in the vast ocean of connectivity. Story number 14. The Burden of the Unsent Letter. In a quiet suburban town where manicured lawns stretched for miles and unspoken expectations often cast long shadows, lived a woman named Clara. Her days were meticulously organized, her home impeccably kept, yet a profound emptiness echoed in the silent corners of her heart. For years, a simmering resentment towards her adult son, Leo, had been her constant companion. Their relationship, once close, had frayed beyond recognition after a bitter disagreement concerning a significant family inheritance. Leo felt Clara had unfairly favored his sister, while Clara believed Leo had been ungrateful and disrespectful. The accusations and hurt had escalated, leading to a complete cessation of contact. Clara carried the burden of this fractured relationship like a heavy stone in her pocket. Every milestone in Leo's life, his marriage, the birth of his children, reached her through intermediaries, each piece of news a fresh stab of pain and a renewed surge of indignation. She drafted countless letters to him in her mind, filled with explanations, accusations, and desperate pleas, but none ever reached paper, let alone an envelope. She believed that until Leo acknowledged his wrongdoing, until he apologized, she could not and should not release her anger. Her peace was held captive by an unresolved past, a story she replayed endlessly in her mind, always seeking to justify her hurt. One crisp autumn afternoon, as leaves swirled around her feet, Clara found herself drawn to a small community garden, a place of unexpected wildness and quiet growth amidst the order of the town. There, an old gardener, his hands covered in soil, was tending to a patch of stubborn weeds. His movements were slow, patient, and filled with a quiet reverence for the earth. Clara, feeling the familiar weight in her chest, approached him. "Sir," she began, her voice strained, "I carry a heavy burden of resentment towards my son. We are estranged, and I feel trapped by the past. I yearn for resolution, but I cannot forgive until he changes. How can one live with such an unforgiven past?" The gardener looked up, his eyes kind and understanding. "Ah, the burden of the unsent letter," he mused, his voice like the gentle rustle of dry leaves. "You hold the words within, believing they are a weapon against the other, but they are often a poison consuming only yourself. Forgiveness, my dear Clara, is not about condoning the past. It is about releasing yourself from its prison." He continued, drawing from timeless wisdom. "In the Buddhist teachings, we speak of dukkha, suffering, arising from upadana, clinging to views, to desires, to the past, and especially to aversion. Your resentment, your anger, your insistence on a specific outcome, Leo's apology, are forms of clinging. They bind you to the very person and situation that cause you pain. The one who truly suffers when you hold on to bitterness is not Leo, but you. The Stoics, the gardener added, would teach you about the dichotomy of control. You cannot control Leo's thoughts, his feelings, his actions, or whether he ever apologizes. These are external and beyond your sphere of influence. What you can control are your own thoughts, your own judgments, and your own choices in this very moment. By choosing to hold on to resentment, you are choosing your own continued suffering. To choose to release it is an act of profound self-liberation, an act entirely within your power.
But it feels like letting him off the hook, Clara countered, her jaw tightening. It feels like betraying myself. On the contrary, the gardener gently corrected, it is freeing yourself from the hook. Forgiveness is not about condoning an injustice or erasing the past. It is about releasing the emotional grip the past has on your present. It means deciding that you will no longer allow another person's actions or your interpretation of them to dictate your inner peace. It is an act of profound self-care. Consider the unsent letter within your heart, he proposed. It is filled with pain, with accusations, with a desperate need for justice. But sending it, or even holding on to it, does not guarantee the outcome you desire. Often, it only perpetuates the cycle of hurt. Instead, you can mentally write that letter, fully express all your pain and anger, and then, with intention, release it. Let it dissolve into the vastness of your own compassion, or offer it to the universe without expectation. The practice is mindfulness, sati, the gardener explained. When the thoughts of resentment arise, when you replay the old arguments, simply notice them. Observe them without judgment. Ah, the old story is playing again. Don't engage with it. Don't add fuel to its fire. Just observe its presence and then gently return your attention to your breath, to the feeling of your feet on the earth, to the present moment. In that spacious awareness, the intensity of the resentment begins to diminish. And cultivate metta, loving kindness, he continued. Begin by wishing yourself peace, wishing yourself freedom from suffering. Then extend that wish, however difficult it may feel, to Leo, not for his actions, but for him as a human being who, like all of us, is striving and suffering in his own way. This does not mean you have to embrace him or reconcile with him if it is not safe or wise. It simply means you release the personal burden of hatred. The burden of the unsent letter, the gardener concluded, is the burden of unprocessed emotion and attachment to external validation. True healing comes not from demanding change from others, but from accepting what is beyond your control and transforming your own inner landscape. When you release that heavy burden, Clara, you create space in your heart for peace, for compassion, and for the possibility of a future where your happiness is not dependent on another's apology, but on your own profound choice to live in freedom. For in that release, the silent bloom of your own inner peace can finally unfurl, unhindered by the shadows of the past. As the gardener spoke, Clara felt a deep sigh escape her lips, a sigh that seemed to carry years of pent-up sorrow. The image of the unsent letter, heavy and rigid, began to soften in her mind, transforming into something lighter, almost translucent. She realized that by clinging to her anger, she had been punishing herself far more than she had ever punished Leo. With a newfound sense of quiet courage, she picked up a small, vibrant flower from the garden bed, not to keep it, but to simply hold its delicate beauty for a moment, a symbol of the fragile, living present she was finally willing to inhabit. The future of her relationship with Leo remained uncertain.
But Clara knew with absolute clarity that her own peace was now within her grasp, a gift she could offer herself. Story number 15, The Mirage of the Perfect Partner. In a bustling town renowned for its vibrant festivals and lively courtship rituals lived a young woman named Lena. Intelligent and compassionate, she longed for a soulmate, a perfect partner who would complete her, understand her every unspoken thought, and fulfill her every need. She spent countless hours imagining this ideal person, meticulously detailing their qualities. Endlessly patient, always supportive, effortlessly charismatic, and utterly devoted. She believed that such a perfect union was the only path to true happiness and fulfillment. Lena dated often, entering each new relationship with a heart full of hope and a mind brimming with her idealized image. In the beginning, there were always sparks of excitement, moments that seemed to align with her vision. But inevitably, as the initial glow faded, the imperfections would emerge. A partner might be kind, but sometimes forgetful, intelligent, but occasionally stubborn, loving, but also in need of their own space. Each discovery of a flaw, each deviation from her meticulously crafted image felt like a profound betrayal, a shattering of her dream. She would feel a wave of intense disappointment, followed by a gnawing emptiness, and quickly move on, convinced she simply hadn't found the one yet. Her relationships were a revolving door, and her heart grew increasingly weary and disillusioned, chasing a mirage she could never quite grasp. The very act of seeking perfection was ironically pushing true connection further away. One quiet afternoon, after another promising relationship had crumbled, Lena found herself sitting by a small, tranquil pond at the edge of town, watching the ripples spread across its surface. An old woman, her face a roadmap of gentle wisdom, was also by the pond, carefully tending to a patch of wildflowers that grew untamed around its edges. She was known as the Weaver of Connections, a quiet figure who seemed to understand the intricate threads that bound people together. Lena, feeling a profound sense of loneliness, spoke to her. "Elder," she sighed, "I long for a perfect partner, someone who understands me completely and fulfills all my desires. But every time I am met with disappointment. Am I doomed to be alone, forever chasing a mirage?" The old woman looked up, her gaze soft. "Ah, the mirage of the perfect partner," she murmured, her voice like the gentle breeze rustling through the reeds. "You seek a reflection of your ideal, but life, my dear, offers you only the fullness of reality. And reality, like these wildflowers, is beautiful precisely because of its imperfections, its wildness, its unique and varied forms." She continued, drawing from profound spiritual insights. In Buddhist teachings, we speak of anatta, non-self, and anicca, impermanence. You are seeking to find a fixed, perfect self in another, to complete a perceived lack within yourself. But neither you nor another is a fixed entity. We are all constantly changing, evolving, imperfect beings. When you cling to a rigid ideal of perfection, you are clinging to an illusion and inevitably creating dukkha, suffering, for yourself when reality does not conform to your craving. The Stoics, the old woman added, would teach you about focusing on what is within your control. You cannot control another person's actions, their thoughts, their flaws, or whether they perfectly match your preconceived notions. These are external. What you can control are your own expectations, your own judgments, and your own responses to others. Your disappointment, Lena, arises not from their imperfections, but from your own attachment to the idea that they should be perfect, that they should fulfill all your needs. But shouldn't a partner meet my needs? Lena asked, perplexed. Isn't that what love is? Love is a vast ocean, the old woman replied, not a neatly packaged container of needs. It is about interdependence, not absolute dependence. And true fulfillment comes not from another completing you, but from cultivating completeness within yourself. When you look to another to fill your emptiness, you place an impossible burden upon them, and you abandon the rich inner landscape of your own being. The mirage you chase, she explained, is fueled by a subtle form of ignorance, avidya, the ignorance that believes happiness resides solely in external circumstances or in a perfected other. It is also rooted in a lack of self-compassion. Perhaps you are judging your own imperfections harshly and thus project that same judgment onto others, unable to accept their humanity because you haven't fully accepted your own. The practice is to cultivate metta, loving kindness, and karuna, compassion, first for yourself and then for others, the old woman advised. Begin by acknowledging your own flaws, your own humanity, with kindness. Then extend that same kindness to those you interact with. When you see a flaw in another, pause. Instead of judging, ask, how might this imperfection be a part of their unique journey? How can I offer understanding and acceptance rather than condemnation?
Authentic connection, she continued, blooms in the space of vulnerability and acceptance, not in the pursuit of a flawless ideal. It is when you can see and embrace another's imperfections alongside your own that true intimacy can arise. It is in the sharing of your authentic, imperfect selves that you truly connect, not in the superficial matching of an imagined list of traits. The most beautiful relationships are often those where individuals are free to be fully themselves, flaws and all, and are met with acceptance, not judgment. The goal, the old woman concluded, is not to find a perfect partner, but to become a whole partner, and to learn to love imperfectly, beautifully, and fully. Release the mirage, Lena. Let go of the rigid list of expectations. Open your heart to the messy, unpredictable, wonderfully human reality of connection. For it is in accepting the cracks, the rough edges, and the ever-changing nature of both yourself and others that you will find a love far deeper, far more resilient, and infinitely more real than any perfect ideal could ever offer. And in that acceptance, the boundless joy of true connection will finally bloom, not as a fleeting mirage, but as a deep, clear wellspring within your own heart. As the old woman spoke, Lena looked at the pond, no longer seeing a reflection of her idealized self, but the rich, living ecosystem around it, each plant and creature thriving in its own unique, imperfect way. A profound sense of relief washed over her. The frantic chase had ceased. She realized that the mirage she pursued was not outside her, but a construct within her own mind, a barrier she had unknowingly built. The pond's ripples seemed to echo a newfound inner peace, a quiet understanding that true connection wasn't about finding a perfect reflection, but about embracing the beautiful, flawed reality of every shared moment. Her heart, finally, was ready to stop chasing and simply to open. Story number 16, The Cracked Mirror of Self-Worth. In a valley known for its crystal-clear lake, whose surface reflected the sky with perfect fidelity, lived a young dancer named Sachi. From a very young age, Sachi had been taught that her worth, her very identity, was inextricably tied to her performance. Every pirouette, every leap, every graceful gesture had to be flawless. She practiced relentlessly, driven by an insatiable hunger for approval from her demanding instructor,
her discerning parents, and the critical eyes of audiences. Her room was filled with mirrors, not to admire her form, but to scrutinize every perceived imperfection, every slight deviation from the ideal. She believed that only through achieving absolute perfection, only by receiving constant external validation, could she truly be worthy of love and acceptance. Despite her undeniable talent and the frequent accolades she received, a deep, pervasive feeling of unworthiness gnawed at Sachi. A single misstep, a fleeting moment of hesitation, or even a critical glance from a peer would shatter her fragile sense of self-esteem. She was constantly comparing herself to others, feeling inferior, never quite good enough. Her joy in dancing was often overshadowed by the relentless pressure to prove her value, to constantly measure up to an ever-shifting, impossible standard. She felt like a cracked mirror, unable to reflect the beauty others saw, perpetually seeing only her own perceived flaws. The constant external validation she craved was a temporary balm, never a lasting cure.
One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, where a minor mistake had sent her spiraling into self-reproach, Sachi fled to the tranquil edge of the lake. The perfectly still water, reflecting the last rays of the setting sun, seemed to mock her inner turmoil. An old potter, whose hands were scarred and stained with clay, but whose creations were imbued with a soulful imperfection, sat by the shore, gently shaping a piece of raw earth. He was known for his quiet wisdom and his understanding of how beauty arose from transformation. Sachi, overwhelmed by her despair, spoke to him. "Master," she began, her voice trembling, "I feel like I am never enough. No matter how hard I try, no matter what I achieve, a voice inside me always says I am unworthy, flawed. How can I ever find a sense of my own value?" The potter looked up, his eyes as calm as the lake's surface. "Ah, the cracked mirror," he murmured, his voice like the soft whisper of falling rain. "You seek your reflection in the eyes of others and in the fleeting perfection of your performance. But true worth, my child, is not a reflection. It is an inherent truth that resides within you, whole and unbroken, regardless of any external judgment." He continued, drawing from the profound insights of the Dharma. The Buddha taught of anatta, non-self, the understanding that there is no fixed, unchanging self that needs to be proven or validated. The self you perceive as unworthy is merely a collection of conditioned thoughts, beliefs, and external opinions you have internalized. When you cling to the idea that your worth is external, that it depends on performance or approval, you are constantly chasing an illusion and inevitably creating dukkha, suffering. Your true nature is boundless awareness, inherently pure and beyond measure. The Stoics, the potter added, would teach you about virtue as the sole good and focusing on what is within your control. Your worth is not determined by external achievements, accolades, or the opinions of others. These are indifferent, outside your control. Your worth is found in your inner character, in your intentions, in your choices to act with courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance. When you seek external validation, you hand your power over to others. When you ground your worth in your own virtuous effort, it becomes unshakable. "But the voice, it's so loud," Sachi whispered, clutching her chest. "It tells me I'm fundamentally flawed." "That voice," the potter said gently, "is not your own. It is an echo of past conditioning, perhaps from harsh teachers or critical parents. It is merely a collection of thoughts, not a fundamental truth about who you are. The practice is to observe this inner critic with mindfulness, sati, without judgment.
When it arises, simply notice it. Ah, the voice of unworthiness is here. Don't argue with it, don't believe it, don't push it away. Just observe it like a cloud passing in the sky. In that gentle observation, its power begins to dissolve. Your pursuit of external perfection, he explained, is a misguided attempt to quiet that inner voice, to earn something you already possess. It's like tirelessly polishing a cracked mirror, hoping it will make the cracks disappear. But the cracks are not in your essence. They are in the lens through which you view yourself, a lens shaped by external conditions. The path to healing is not to perfect the reflection, but to heal the perception.
Cultivate metta, loving-kindness, for yourself, the potter advised, his hands gently kneading the clay. Treat yourself with the same compassion you would offer to a beloved child who feels they are not good enough. Recognize that the feeling of unworthiness is a form of suffering, and extend kindness to that suffering within you. You are a human being, inherently worthy simply by virtue of your existence, not because of what you achieve or what others think of you. True self-worth, the potter concluded, is not earned. It is realized. It is not found in the flawless reflection of a perfect mirror, but in the deep, unwavering acceptance of your authentic, imperfect, and ever-evolving self. It is understanding that your inherent value is like the lake itself, vast, profound, and undisturbed by the ripples and reflections on its surface. For when you cease chasing external validation and instead turn inward with compassion, you will discover that the mirror within you was never truly cracked. It was only veiled by illusion, and beneath that veil, your true, radiant worth shines, boundless and eternally whole. As the potter spoke, Sachi looked at the lake, its surface now still and reflecting the emerging starlight. She saw her own face, not with the critical gaze she usually employed, but with a new, gentle acceptance. The constant pressure in her chest began to ease, replaced by a quiet sense of liberation. She understood that her worth was not something she had to earn or prove, but something she already possessed, a silent, enduring truth within her. The dance of her life, she realized, could now be danced not for approval, but for the sheer joy of movement, for the pure expression of her own unfolding being. The mirror within her, she knew, was finally beginning to reflect a more compassionate, truer image of herself. Story number 17, The Murmur of Unfinished Business. In a quiet coastal town where generations lived closely intertwined, families often found themselves bound by not just love and lineage, but also by the heavy threads of unresolved disputes and lingering resentments. It was a common sight. Siblings who no longer spoke after a disagreement over a shared family legacy. Neighbors locked in silent combat over a property line. Or cousins avoiding each other after a bitter financial squabble. These conflicts, often decades old, simmered beneath the surface of daily life, casting a long, unseen shadow over homes and hearts. Among these entangled lives was that of a middle-aged woman named Amy. Her family had been torn apart by a contentious inheritance dispute after her parents passed. The division of their modest estate, particularly a small ancestral fishing boat, had ignited a fierce argument between Amy and her elder brother, Kenji. Both felt wronged, both believed they were in the right, and neither was willing to yield. The boat, once a symbol of their shared heritage, now lay rotting in the harbor, a stark monument to their fractured relationship. Amy carried the weight of this unfinished business everywhere. Her sleep was restless, her days punctuated by bursts of anger and a deep sense of injustice. She yearned for peace, yet felt perpetually bound to this unresolved past, convinced that until the dispute was settled to her satisfaction, she would never be free. One misty morning, as Amy walked along the harbor,
Her gaze fixed on the derelict boat, she noticed an old storyteller sitting on a weathered wooden crate, meticulously retying the knots on a discarded fishing net. His face was a roadmap of life's journeys, and his eyes, though ancient, held a clear, unwavering light. He was known for his ability to untangle life's complex threads with simple, profound tales. Emmy, feeling the familiar ache in her chest, sat beside him. "Master," she began, her voice heavy with weariness, "my family is trapped by a dispute, a piece of unfinished business that poisons everything. It feels like an unbreakable knot. How can one find release from such a burden?" The storyteller looked up from his work, his fingers still deftly weaving the net. "Ah, the murmur of unfinished business," he said, his voice like the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. "You seek to untie the knot by pulling harder, but some knots, my dear, only tighten with force. True release often comes from loosening your grip." He continued, drawing from the boundless wisdom of the Dharma. The Buddha taught that suffering, dukkha, arises from clinging, upadana. You are clinging to the past, to the perceived injustice, to the idea that resolution must come from outside yourself, from Kenji's actions. This clinging keeps the wound fresh. The boat may be rotting, but the true rot is in your heart, nourished by your attachment to the grievance. Your peace is not dependent on the outcome of the dispute, but on your willingness to release the need for that outcome to define you. The Stoics, the storyteller added, would remind you of what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control Kenji's perspective, his actions, or his willingness to reconcile. These are external. What you can control are your own thoughts, your own judgments, and your own responses to this situation. Your burden is not the dispute itself, but your internal resistance to its unresolved nature, your insistence that it must be resolved in a specific way for you to find peace. "But it's unfair," Emmy insisted, the anger rising in her voice. "He was wrong." "Right and wrong are often deeply personal narratives," the storyteller said gently. "From Kenji's perspective, he may feel equally wronged, equally justified. Holding on to the idea of absolute rightness often prevents any movement towards peace. The path forward is not to convince the other, but to release your own need to be perpetually right and to acknowledge the shared human struggle for understanding. Unfinished business," he explained, "is often a mirror reflecting our own internal conflicts. Perhaps it speaks to a need for validation or a desire for control that extends beyond the tangible. When you repeatedly replay the past in your mind, you are reliving the pain, allowing it to define your present. This is where the practice of mindfulness, sati, becomes crucial. When the thoughts of the dispute arise, simply notice them. Observe the narrative without getting entangled in its emotional grip. Ah, the story of the boat is playing again. Acknowledge it, and then gently return your attention to the present moment. The sound of the waves, the feel of the sun on your skin, your own breath. Cultivate metta, loving-kindness, for yourself," the storyteller advised. "This burden you carry is causing you suffering. Treat yourself with compassion for that pain. And then, if you can, extend a similar wish for Kenji's peace, not for his actions, but for him as a fellow human struggling." This does not mean forgetting the past or excusing wrongdoing, but simply choosing to release the venom that consumes your own heart. Sometimes the unfinished business is not meant to be resolved externally, the storyteller concluded, his gaze sweeping over the harbor, but internally. It is about coming to terms with the reality of what is, accepting that certain threads cannot be rewoven, and finding peace within that acceptance. It's about disentangling your own well-being from the other person's actions or the outcome of a dispute. For when you release the grip of that unfinished business, when you free yourself from the need for external closure, you find that the knot in your heart begins to loosen, and your own boat, though perhaps weathered, can finally sail forth into the boundless ocean of the present moment, unburdened and truly free. As the storyteller spoke, Emmy looked at the derelict fishing boat and then at the mended net in the old man's hands. She saw not just the brokenness, but the possibility of patient repair, even if the threads were new. A profound calm settled over her. The deep-seated knot of resentment hadn't vanished, but it felt less rigid, more like a worn rope she could finally lay down. She understood that her peace was not contingent on Kenji's actions, but on her own willingness to unbind herself from the past. The murmur of unfinished business began to recede, replaced by the gentle hum of the present moment, a quiet symphony of freedom and profound possibility. Story number 18, The Illusory Burden of Being the Strong One. In a bustling fishing village where the sea's temperament shaped every life, lived a woman named Rena. From childhood, Rena had been cast in the role of the strong one. When her parents faced hardship, she was the stoic support. When her younger siblings struggled, she was the unwavering pillar. She learned to suppress her own tears, to swallow her fears, and to present an unyielding front to the world. She believed that to show vulnerability, to admit weakness, was to fail her loved ones, to compromise her very identity. Her greatest fear was crumbling under pressure, of not being able to bear the weight she felt was hers alone. This constant suppression, this relentless performance of strength, left her perpetually exhausted, her inner landscape a desert of unexpressed emotions, despite the apparent calm of her outward demeanor. She rarely sought help, convinced it would burden others or reveal her inherent inadequacy. Even in moments of profound personal sorrow, like the recent illness of her elderly mother, Rena felt compelled to manage everything, to reassure everyone, while her own heart quietly fractured. The weight she carried felt increasingly crushing, an illusory burden woven from expectations, both hers and others, that prevented her from experiencing genuine connection or allowing herself moments of true rest. She longed for release, but the very act of letting go felt like an act of betrayal. One blustery afternoon, as a storm brewed over the horizon, Rena found herself walking along the docks, watching the small fishing boats being meticulously secured by weathered hands. She noticed an old boat builder, his back bent with age, carefully inspecting the ropes of his own vessel. His movements were slow, but imbued with a quiet efficiency. He was known for his understanding of the sea's true power and the wisdom of knowing when to yield. Rena, feeling the familiar strain in her shoulders, approached him. "Master," she began, her voice tight with unexpressed fatigue, "I am always expected to be strong, to carry the burdens of those I love. I feel I cannot falter, cannot show weakness, but the weight, it is crushing me. How can one remain strong without breaking?" The old boat builder looked up, his eyes as deep and calm as the ocean before a storm. "Ah, the illusory burden of being the strong one," he murmured, his voice like the creaking of timbers. "You believe strength is found in an unbending mast, but true strength, my dear Rena, is like the mast that knows when to sway with the wind, when to lower its sail, and when to seek the harbor's shelter." He continued, drawing from the boundless wisdom of the Dharma. The Buddha taught of anatta, non-self, the understanding that the self you perceive as needing to be perpetually strong is but a temporary construct, often shaped by past roles and expectations. When you cling to this rigid identity, you deny your own humanity, your own inherent need for support and vulnerability. This clinging creates dukkha. True strength is not the absence of weakness, but the courage to acknowledge and embrace your full human experience, including vulnerability. The Stoics, the boat builder added, would speak of what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control the hardships that arise for your loved ones, nor can you control their expectations of you. These are external. What you can control are your own reactions, your own judgments about what strength truly means, and your choice to ask for help. You judge your vulnerability as a failing, but it is simply a part of your authentic being. To embrace it is an act of profound self-respect and wisdom. But if I show weakness, they might see me differently, Rena confessed, her gaze fixed on the turbulent sea. They might lose faith in me. That is a fear, not a truth, the boat builder gently corrected. Often, what you perceive as weakness, others may see as courage, authenticity, and an invitation for deeper connection. When you constantly project an image of unshakable strength, you create an emotional distance, preventing others from truly seeing and supporting you. You deny them the opportunity to offer their own strength, their own compassion. The illusory burden you carry, he explained, is fueled by a subtle form of attachment to a specific identity, attachment to the outcome of always being seen as capable, attachment to the idea that self-worth depends on endless self-sacrifice. This attachment makes you rigid, like an old oak tree that snaps in a storm, rather than bending with it. The practice is to cultivate self-compassion, metta, the boat builder advised. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a dear friend who is struggling. Recognize that feeling overwhelmed, tired, or vulnerable is not a flaw, but a natural human response. Allow yourself to feel these emotions without judgment. This is mindfulness, sati, observing your inner landscape without resistance, without the need to fix or suppress. When you feel the weight, acknowledge it, and gently say to yourself, "It's okay to feel this. It's okay to need support." True strength, the old man concluded, his hand resting on a sturdy rope, is not about carrying all the weight alone. It is about knowing your limits, communicating your needs, and trusting the inherent strength in interdependence. It is about understanding that a ship is strongest, not when it battles the storm alone, but when its crew works together, sharing the load, knowing when to hoist sails and when to take shelter. For when you bravely allow yourself to be vulnerable, when you release the illusory burden of being the strong one, you discover a wellspring of resilience and genuine connection you never knew existed. And your heart, finally unburdened, can breathe freely amidst the unpredictable currents of life. As the boat builder spoke, Rena felt a profound sense of relief, as if a tight band around her chest had loosened. The brewing storm outside no longer felt like a threat, but a reflection of the tumultuous emotions she had suppressed for so long. She looked at the old man, not with pity for his age, but with reverence for his quiet wisdom, for his understanding that true strength lay in a deep intimacy with reality, not a defiance of it. The illusory burden began to dissipate, replaced by a nascent courage to simply be herself, fully human, fully vulnerable, and in that vulnerability, truly strong. She walked away from the docks, her steps lighter, ready to face the storm, not alone, but with an open heart, finally willing to embrace the gentle sway of the wind. Story number 19, The Tangled Weeds of Comparison. In a sprawling, vibrant garden filled with an astonishing diversity of flowers, From towering sunflowers to delicate violets, lived a gardener named Hana. Her garden was her pride and joy, a testament to her diligent care. Yet Hana often found herself consumed by a quiet discontent. She spent countless hours online, browsed digital gardens, comparing her blooms to the seemingly flawless specimens cultivated by others.
A neighbor's perfectly symmetrical rosebush, a rival gardener's rare orchid, or a stranger's prize-winning dahlias would instantly trigger a pang of inadequacy. She felt a persistent urge to be the best, to have the most unique and beautiful garden. And this relentless comparison stole the joy from her own patch of earth. The more she compared, the more she found fault with her own garden. Her roses had aphids, her sunflowers weren't tall enough, her violets too common. Even when her flowers bloomed in breathtaking beauty, she saw them through a lens of deficiency, convinced that someone else's were always brighter, more fragrant, or more perfectly formed. This constant mental measuring left her exhausted, envious, and perpetually dissatisfied. She longed for a sense of contentment, but felt forever trapped in a race she could never win, cultivating a garden not for its inherent beauty, but for external validation. One warm afternoon, as Hana sat amidst her own flourishing flowers, a sense of profound weariness washing over her. An old, wizened gardener with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of every season arrived. He was known for his ability to see the unique beauty in every plant, no matter how humble. Hana, feeling the familiar sting of inadequacy, sighed. "Master," she began, her voice laced with despair, "my garden is never enough. I constantly compare it to others, and I am always falling short. How can I find peace when there is always someone with a more perfect bloom?" The old gardener knelt, gently touching a dew-kissed daisy. "Ah, the tangled weeds of comparison," he murmured, his voice like the soft rustle of leaves. "You spend your energy tending to the weeds of envy in your own mind, rather than enjoying the unique beauty that already flourishes around you." Comparison, my dear Hana, is a thief of joy, robbing you of the present moment, he continued, drawing from the boundless wisdom of the Dharma. The Buddha taught that dukkha, suffering, arises from craving, tanha, and ignorance. You crave to be better than, to possess more than. This craving for external validation, fueled by the illusion that your worth depends on external achievements or appearances, creates your dissatisfaction. You are ignorant of your own inherent completeness, of the unique beauty of your own path. The practice is to release this craving and to awaken to your own innate worth. The Stoics, the old gardener added, would speak of what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control other people's gardens, their talents, or their external achievements. These are external. What you can control are your own thoughts, your own judgments, and your own actions in tending your own garden, both literally and metaphorically. When you choose to compare, you choose your own discontent. When you choose to focus on your own effort and appreciate your own unique journey, you cultivate inner tranquility. "But how can I stop comparing?" Hana asked, a knot of frustration in her brow. "It feels automatic." "It is a deeply ingrained habit of the mind," the gardener acknowledged. "You cannot simply command it to cease. But you can learn to observe it without engagement. This is the core of mindfulness, sati. When the thought, 'their roses are better,' arises, simply notice it. Ah, a comparison thought has arrived. Don't follow it down the rabbit hole of self-criticism or envy. Don't judge yourself for having the thought. Just observe its presence, and then gently bring your attention back to the breath, to the rich soil in your hands, to the unique beauty of your own daisy. In that spacious awareness, the thought loses its grip.
Comparison often stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of interconnectedness, he explained. You see individual flowers in isolation, competing. But in truth, every flower, every garden is part of the larger tapestry of life, each playing its unique role. Your garden does not diminish another's, nor does another's diminish yours. They simply are. Cultivate mudita, sympathetic joy, the old gardener advised. This means genuinely rejoicing in the happiness and success of others without feeling diminished. When you see a beautiful garden, instead of comparing, simply appreciate its beauty for what it is. Wish the other gardener well. In doing so, you transform the poison of envy into the nectar of shared joy, and you expand your own capacity for happiness. And most importantly, he concluded, his gaze encompassing Hana's entire garden, cultivate self-compassion, metta. Treat your own garden and your own self with the same kindness and nurturing care you would offer to a fragile, struggling seedling. Recognize that you are a unique bloom in the vast garden of life, with your own unique rhythm, your own unique beauty, and your own unique journey. Your worth is not determined by how you measure up against others, but by your inherent capacity to simply be yourself, authentically and fully. For when you release the tangled weeds of comparison, the unique beauty of your own flourishing in all its wonderful imperfection can finally radiate its true light, unhindered and profoundly at peace. As the old gardener spoke, Hana looked at her own garden with new eyes. The daisy, once merely common, now seemed vibrant and perfectly formed in its delicate simplicity. The subtle imperfections on her rose leaves no longer seemed like flaws, but rather marks of its resilience, its life lived. A profound sense of liberation settled over her. The constant internal dialogue of comparison began to quiet, replaced by a deep appreciation for the rich, living beauty surrounding her, a beauty she had been too busy measuring to truly see. She knew the weeds might still appear, but now she had the wisdom to tend to them, not with self-judgment, but with the gentle, mindful hand of acceptance, allowing her own unique garden to flourish in its own perfect way. Story number 20, The Mirage of Permanent Happiness. In a sun-drenched coastal town, famed for its perpetually clear skies and joyful celebrations, lived a young woman named Kiko. From a very early age, Kiko had absorbed the town's prevailing belief. Happiness was a constant, attainable state, a sunny sky that, once achieved, should never cloud over. She diligently pursued every path she believed would lead to this permanent bliss, acquiring beautiful possessions, cultivating perfect relationships, achieving professional success, and always maintaining a cheerful demeanor. She meticulously avoided anything that might bring sadness, pain, or discomfort, believing that these were threats to her desired state of perpetual joy. Yet, despite her relentless efforts, true contentment eluded her. A fleeting argument with a friend would send ripples of despair through her. A small setback at work would feel like a catastrophic failure, and even the natural melancholy of a rainy day would plunge her into disproportionate gloom. She felt like a tightrope walker, constantly striving to maintain a precarious balance of positivity, terrified of falling into the abyss of negativity. The occasional moments of genuine happiness felt fragile, always threatened by the inevitable ebb and flow of life's challenges. She was exhausted by the relentless pursuit, chasing a mirage of unchanging joy, and her heart felt perpetually anxious, guarding against the inevitable clouds she believed would ruin everything. One tranquil morning, after a sudden, unexpected downpour had left the town glistening, Kiko sought refuge by the old lighthouse, its ancient lamp still glowing in the lingering mist. There, she found an old lighthouse keeper, his face weathered by countless storms, yet his eyes held a profound, quiet serenity. He was known for his understanding of the sea's changeable moods and his unwavering presence amidst its turbulence. Kiko, feeling the familiar dread of the lingering dampness in the air, sighed. "Master," she began, her voice tinged with frustration, "I chase happiness with all my might, but it feels so fleeting. Every small cloud, every hint of sadness threatens to ruin everything. How can I find permanent happiness, a joy that never fades?" The old lighthouse keeper looked out at the ocean, now calm but still reflecting the recent rain. "Ah, the mirage of permanent happiness," he murmured, his voice like the steady rhythm of the waves. "You seek a perpetually sunny sky, but life, my dear, is like the ocean, vast, beautiful, and ever-changing. It has its calm days, its gentle ripples, and its powerful storms. True peace, Kiko, is not found in the absence of clouds, but in learning to navigate every weather with an open heart and a steady hand." He continued, drawing from the boundless wisdom of the Dharma. The Buddha taught of anicca, impermanence. Everything is in a constant state of flux. Happiness is impermanent, and so is sorrow. To cling to the idea of an unchanging happiness, to resist the natural arising and passing of all emotions, is to invite dukkha, suffering. Your very resistance to sadness, to discomfort, creates more pain. The path is not to eradicate the negative emotions, but to learn to meet them with awareness and acceptance, understanding their transient nature. The Stoics, the lighthouse keeper added, would teach you about accepting what is and the dichotomy of control. You cannot control the weather, whether external or internal. You cannot control the inevitable arising of challenges, losses, or difficult emotions. These are external to your direct will. What you can control are your perceptions, your judgments, and your responses to these events. When you judge sadness as bad or fear as unacceptable, you compound your suffering. The Stoic path is to cultivate ataraxia, a state of inner tranquility unaffected by external circumstances, by aligning yourself with what is natural, including the natural flow of all human emotions. "But if I don't chase happiness, won't I just be miserable?" Kiko worried aloud. "You confuse chasing with experiencing," the keeper gently corrected. "When you constantly chase, you are always looking ahead, never truly inhabiting the present moment, where life in all its messy fullness actually unfolds. True joy, profound contentment, is not a destination to be reached, but a deep appreciation for the preciousness of each present moment, regardless of its emotional texture. The mirage of permanent happiness," he explained, "is fueled by a subtle form of attachment. Attachment to a specific feeling state, attachment to the idea that life should always be pleasant. It is also rooted in a misunderstanding of equanimity, upekkha. Equanimity is not indifference. It is a balanced mind that can meet both pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, with an inner spaciousness, understanding that all will pass. It is the wisdom that allows you to be deeply alive to all of life's experiences, without being swept away by any single one. The practice is mindfulness, sati, the lighthouse keeper advised. When a wave of sadness or discomfort arises, instead of resisting it, pause. Notice its presence. Observe it in your body, in your mind. Ah, sadness is here. Don't judge it, don't cling to it, don't push it away. Simply allow it to be. In that gentle, non-judgmental observation, emotions lose their power to overwhelm you. They simply pass, like clouds across the sun. And cultivate metta, loving kindness, for yourself, he concluded. Treat yourself with compassion when you feel vulnerable, when you feel the pang of sadness. You are a human being, designed to experience a full spectrum of emotions. There is no shame in this. The deepest, most resilient happiness is not found by avoiding the shadows, but by embracing the full spectrum of your human experience, learning to walk through all of life's weather with courage, acceptance, and a profound sense of gratitude for the very act of being alive. For when you release the mirage of unchanging happiness, you discover a deeper, more resilient wellspring of peace within you. A silent light that shines even in the darkest storms, guiding you home. As the lighthouse keeper spoke, Kiko looked at the ocean, its vastness no longer daunting, but comforting in its endless, powerful ebb and flow. The lingering sadness from the rain didn't vanish, but it felt lighter, no longer a threat to her peace, but simply a part of the moment. A profound sense of liberation settled within her. She realized that chasing a single, unchanging emotion had kept her from truly living. Her heart, no longer striving for an impossible ideal, finally opened to the beautiful, imperfect, and ever-changing reality of life, finding a deeper, more resilient happiness in the acceptance of it all. The sun would still shine and the clouds would still gather, but Kiko now carried her own inner light, strong and unwavering through every season. Story number 21. The Pressure Cooker of Performance. In a gleaming high-rise building, amidst the relentless hum of computers and the constant urgency of ringing phones, lived a brilliant young executive named Akira. His career was a meteoric ascent, marked by ambitious projects, demanding deadlines, and a fierce competitive spirit. From the moment he woke, his mind was racing, planning, optimizing, and strategizing. He was driven by an unshakable belief that his worth, his very survival in the corporate world, depended on constant, flawless performance and unceasing productivity. He believed that any dip in output, any perceived imperfection would lead to failure, to being left behind in the ruthless race for success. Akira thrived on pressure, or so he told himself. He worked long hours, skipped meals, and rarely took breaks. His colleagues admired his dedication and seemingly boundless energy. But beneath the surface, Akira was perpetually exhausted. His sleep was fragmented, his relationships strained, and his mind a constant whirlwind of to-do lists and anxieties about future targets. He felt like he was trapped in a pressure cooker, the steam building relentlessly, always on the verge of exploding. He yearned for a moment of quiet, a breath of spaciousness, but felt compelled to keep pushing, convinced that to slow down was to invite disaster. This relentless striving, ironically, diminished his creativity and joy, trapping him in a cycle of burnout. One evening, after yet another marathon workday, Akira found himself staring blankly at his reflection in the office window, the city lights blurring before his tired eyes. A cleaning lady, a woman with silver hair pulled back in a simple bun, was quietly sweeping the corridor. Her movements slow and rhythmic, yet imbued with a profound sense of calm. Her presence, a stark contrast to the frantic energy of the office, intrigued him. Akira, feeling the familiar tightening in his chest, spoke to her. "Madam," he began, his voice hoarse with fatigue, "I am constantly under immense pressure to perform, to produce more, to always be at my best. If I falter, even for a moment, I fear everything will collapse. How can one survive this relentless demand?" The cleaning lady paused her sweeping, her gaze serene. "Ah, the pressure cooker," she murmured, her voice like a soft broom against a polished floor. "You believe the pressure makes you strong, but sometimes, my dear, it only makes you rigid. True strength, like a bamboo shoot, lies not in resisting the wind, but in knowing when to sway. when to bend, and when to simply be still. She continued, drawing from timeless wisdom. In Buddhist teachings, we speak of dukkha, suffering, arising from tanha, specifically craving for outcomes, craving for recognition, and craving for a certain image of oneself. You are craving constant validation through performance, and this craving creates the relentless pressure you feel. The self that fears failure is a conditioned identity, not your true nature, which is inherently calm and boundless. When you cling to this demanding identity, you entrap yourself in a cycle of anxiety and exhaustion. The Stoics, the cleaning lady added, would teach you about the dichotomy of control. You cannot control market demands, the actions of your competitors, or even the expectations of your superiors. These are external. What you can control are your own efforts, your intentions, your judgments about what success truly means, and your choice to rest. Your relentless pursuit of external achievement at the cost of your well-being is a choice. The Stoic path is to cultivate euthymia, a tranquil mind, by aligning your actions with your virtues and accepting what is beyond your control, including the natural need for rest and recovery. But if I stop, if I slow down, I will lose my edge, Akira insisted, his hands unconsciously clenching. I will fall behind. That is a fear of scarcity, a fear born of illusion, she gently corrected. You believe your worth is scarce, limited, dependent on constant output. But your inherent worth is boundless, not contingent on external metrics. True edge, true creativity does not come from relentless pushing, but from moments of spaciousness, of quiet reflection, of allowing your mind to rest and replenish. A well-maintained blade cuts more effectively than a dull one, however hard it is pressed. The pressure cooker you describe, she explained, is fueled by a constant internal dialogue of not enough and must do more. This relentless self-criticism often stems from internalized societal pressures or past experiences where performance was directly linked to acceptance. The practice is to cultivate self-compassion, metta. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a struggling friend. Acknowledge your tiredness, your fear, your human limitations without judgment. Say, it's okay to feel this. It's okay to rest. My worth is not my productivity. And cultivate mindfulness, sati, she concluded, finishing her sweeping motion with a gentle flourish. When the urge to push, to strive relentlessly arises, pause. Notice the sensations in your body, the tension, the racing thoughts. Observe them without judgment. Breathe into them. Then, gently, consciously, choose a different action, a brief walk, a moment of quiet reflection, a deep breath. You are not a machine, Akira. You are a human being, needing balance, needing rest, needing moments of profound non-doing to truly flourish. For when you release the illusory burden of constant performance, when you step out of the pressure cooker, you will discover an inner spaciousness, a wellspring of creativity and well-being that no amount of external striving could ever truly achieve. And in that spaciousness, your true, resilient strength will finally bloom, quietly and profoundly. As the cleaning lady spoke, Akira felt an unfamiliar sensation, a loosening in his chest, a subtle slowing of his racing mind. He looked at the quiet, meticulous movements of the woman, a profound sense of calm radiating from her simple act of sweeping. He realized that the relentless pressure he felt was largely self-imposed, a cage he had built around himself with his own beliefs. The city's hum still surrounded him, but now Akira could hear a deeper, quieter rhythm within himself, a gentle invitation to step out of the pressure cooker and into the spaciousness of his own authentic being. He knew his journey was long, but for the first time, he felt he could truly breathe, truly rest, and truly begin to live a life not defined by relentless performance, but by quiet, authentic presence. Story number 22, The Web of Societal Expectations. In a bustling town where traditions ran deep and the collective voice often overshadowed individual whispers, lived a talented young artisan named Ren. From childhood, Ren was acutely aware of the intricate web of societal expectations that enveloped him. His family had a long lineage of revered scholars, and the community held strong views on proper conduct, suitable careers, and the path to a successful and honorable life. Ren, an artist at heart, felt an immense pressure to conform, to choose a path that would garner approval and respect, even if it meant sacrificing his own deepest passions. He believed that deviation from these expectations would lead to ostracism, shame, and a profound sense of failure, not just for himself, but for his entire family. He tried to fulfill every expectation, excelling in academic pursuits, joining community committees, and even attempting to cultivate an interest in scholarly texts. Yet beneath the veneer of compliance, a quiet rebellion simmered. His heart yearned to paint, to sculpt, to create beauty with his hands, but the internalized voices of tradition whispered that such pursuits were frivolous, impractical, and unworthy of a true scholar. This constant internal conflict left him feeling fragmented, inauthentic, and perpetually anxious, as if he were living a life prescribed by others rather than one chosen by himself. He found himself constantly seeking external validation, desperate for a sign that he was doing enough, but the approval, when it came, felt hollow, never truly reaching the quiet despair in his heart. One evening, after a particularly stifling family gathering where his artistic aspirations were subtly dismissed, Ren wandered to the town's ancient weaving mill, a place where generations of threads had been spun into intricate tapestries. He found an old weaver, her fingers nimble and wise, meticulously repairing a delicate antique loom. She was known for her understanding of patterns, both visible and invisible, and her deep respect for the unique thread each life spun. Ren, feeling the familiar weight of others' expectations pressing down on him, spoke to her. "Madam," he began, his voice heavy, "I feel trapped by the expectations of my family and society. I long to follow my own path, but I fear disapproval, judgment, and the shame of not meeting what is expected of me. How can one break free from such a powerful web?" The old weaver looked up, her gaze steady and compassionate. "Ah, the web of societal expectations," she murmured, her voice like the rhythmic click of the loom. "You believe its threads are unbreakable, but often, my dear, they are woven from fear and illusion, both yours and others. True freedom is not found in destroying the web, but in learning to weave your own unique thread within it, without being entangled by its dictates," she continued, drawing from the boundless wisdom of the Dharma. The Buddha taught of anatta, non-self, the understanding that the self you are trying to mold to fit external expectations is merely a conditioned identity, a temporary construct. Your true nature is boundless, inherently free, and not defined by the opinions of others. When you cling to the approval of society, when you allow external measures to define your worth, you create dukkha, suffering. You become a prisoner of someone else's definition of happiness. The Stoics, the weaver added, would teach you about control and indifference. You cannot control society's expectations, your family's judgments, or the opinions of others. These are external and indifferent to your true well-being. What you can control are your own choices, your own values, and your own actions in alignment with your inner truth. When you seek validation from outside, you hand your power over to others. When you ground your worth in your own virtuous path and genuine desires, it becomes unshakable, regardless of external approval or disapproval. But what about shame? Ren asked, the word a raw whisper.
The shame of being different? Of disappointing them? Shame is a powerful illusion, the weaver acknowledged. It thrives in silence and secrecy. It is often an internalized voice of others' judgments, not your own true voice. The path to dissolving shame is to shine the light of awareness upon it, to observe it without judgment, and to recognize that your inherent worth is independent of any external critique. What others perceive as disappointment is often their own unfulfilled expectations, not a reflection of your inherent value. The web you described, she explained, is also fueled by attachment. Attachment to comfort, attachment to belonging, attachment to the perceived security of conformity. This attachment keeps you bound, even when it stifles your spirit. The practice is to cultivate viraga, dispassion or letting go, not indifference, but a healthy detachment from outcomes that are not within your control, including others' opinions of you. The web you described, she explained, is also fueled by attachment. Attachment to comfort, attachment to belonging, attachment to the perceived security of conformity. This attachment keeps you bound, even when it stifles your spirit. The practice is to cultivate viraga, dispassion or letting go, not indifference, but a healthy detachment from outcomes that are not within your control, including others' opinions of you. Cultivate mindfulness, sati, the weaver advised. When the internal voices of expectation or judgment arise, pause. Notice the feeling in your body, the thoughts in your mind. Ah, the societal expectation is here. Don't argue with it. Don't believe it. Simply observe it, and then gently return your attention to your breath, to your own quiet aspirations, to the unique thread that is uniquely yours to weave. In that spacious awareness, the web begins to loosen its grip. And most importantly, she concluded, her fingers gently touching Ren's hand, cultivate metta, loving kindness for yourself. Treat your own yearnings, your own unique gifts with tenderness and respect. Recognize that your true contribution to the world lies not in fitting into a mold, but in authentically expressing the unique pattern of your own soul. The world needs your unique thread, Ren, not a copy of someone else's. For when you bravely choose to honor your true self, when you free yourself from the illusory web of others' expectations, you discover a profound inner peace, a joy that is deeply authentic, and a boundless creativity that will weave a tapestry far richer and more meaningful than any preordained design. As the old weaver spoke, Ren felt a profound sense of liberation. The invisible threads that had bound him began to loosen, not breaking, but becoming supple, allowing him to breathe. He looked at the antique loom, at the intricate patterns being woven, and understood that he too could weave his own unique design into the grand tapestry of life, without having to sever himself from his roots. The pressure of societal expectations began to recede, replaced by a nascent courage to embrace his own path, his own art. He knew the journey would be challenging, but for the first time, Ren felt a deep, authentic peace, a quiet joy arising from the courageous choice to simply be himself, allowing his own unique thread to finally shine in the vibrant, interconnected web of life. Story number 23, The Illusion of Fixed Roles. In a picturesque mountain village where generations had adhered strictly to age-old traditions,
and gender roles were as rigid as the granite peaks surrounding them, lived a young man named Hiroki. From the moment he could walk, Hiroki was groomed to follow in his father's footsteps as the village's esteemed stone sculptor. His hands, though deft and strong, longed to tend to the delicate blossoms in his mother's renowned flower garden. He loved the earth, the vibrant colors, the quiet nurturing that gardening required. But this was seen as women's work, a deviation from the path of a true male artisan. Hiroki felt trapped, suffocated by the heavy cloak of expectation. He carved stone by day, his heart growing heavier with each strike of the hammer. By night, he secretly tended a small, hidden patch of flowers, finding solace and joy in their silent growth. This duality, this constant suppression of his true self to fit a preordained role, left him feeling fragmented, inauthentic, and deeply unhappy. He yearned to break free, to express his true nature, but the fear of shaming his family and being ostracized by the village was a formidable barrier. He believed his happiness was contingent on fulfilling his assigned role, yet fulfilling it only led to quiet despair. One crisp spring morning, as the first wildflowers began to unfurl their petals on the mountain slopes, Hiroki sought refuge in a secluded bamboo grove, known for its deep stillness. There he found an old monk, his robes faded with age, patiently weaving intricate baskets from thin bamboo strips. The monk's hands, though calloused, moved with a surprising delicacy. He was known for his ability to see beyond surface appearances, to the true essence of things. Hiroki, feeling the familiar weight of his predicament, spoke to him. "Venerable one," he began, his voice barely a whisper, "I am bound by the roles my family and village have assigned me. I am expected to be a stone sculptor, but my heart yearns for the garden. I fear shame, disapproval, and losing my place if I follow my true passion. How can one live authentically when trapped by such rigid expectations?" The monk looked up, his gaze gentle and clear. "Ah, the illusion of fixed roles," he murmured, his voice like the rustle of bamboo leaves. "You believe your essence is defined by a label, by a task, by what others expect of you. But your true nature, my dear Hiroki, is like this bamboo, flexible, resilient, and capable of many forms, not just the one you are currently bent into." He continued, drawing from the boundless wisdom of the Dharma. The Buddha taught of anatta, non-self, the understanding that there is no fixed, unchanging self that is permanently a sculptor or a gardener, or male or female in a rigid sense. These are concepts, roles, temporary identities we adopt or are assigned. When you cling to the belief that you are your assigned role and that your worth depends on fulfilling it, you create dukkha, suffering. Your true self is vast awareness, beyond all labels and limitations. The Stoics, the monk added, would teach you about living in accordance with nature and focusing on what is within your control. You cannot control the traditions of your village, your family's expectations, or the judgments of others. These are external. What you can control are your own choices, your own values, and your own actions in alignment with your inner truth. To live virtuously means to live authentically, to honor your inherent gifts, even if it means navigating societal disapproval. The Stoic path is to cultivate eudaimonia, human flourishing, by aligning your inner desires with your outward actions, independent of external applause or censure. "But the shame, it feels unbearable," Hiroki confessed, his eyes downcast. "The thought of disappointing my father." "Shame," the monk said, "is often the internalized voice of others' expectations.
It is not your own truth. It thrives when you suppress your authentic self. The path to dissolving shame is to shine the light of awareness upon it, to recognize that your inherent worth is not dependent on fulfilling another's vision of you. The deepest disappointment, Hiroki, is the disappointment you inflict upon yourself by denying your own spirit. The illusion of fixed roles, he explained, is fueled by attachment. Attachment to belonging, attachment to acceptance, attachment to the comfort of conformity. This attachment keeps you bound, even when it leads to inner suffering. The practice is to cultivate viraga, dispassion or letting go. Not indifference, but a healthy detachment from outcomes that are not within your control, including others' opinions of your life choices. Cultivate mindfulness, sati, the monk advised. When the internal voices of expectation or judgment arise, pause. Notice the sensation in your body, the thought in your mind. Ah, the family expectation is here. Don't argue with it, don't believe it. Simply observe it, and then gently return your attention to your breath, to your own quiet aspirations, to the feeling of joy that arises when you think of the garden. In that spacious awareness, the illusion of the fixed role begins to loosen its grip. And most importantly, he concluded, his hands resting on a delicate bamboo strip, cultivate metta, loving kindness for yourself. Treat your own yearnings, your own unique gifts with tenderness and respect. Recognize that your true contribution to the world lies not in fitting into a mold, but in authentically expressing the unique pattern of your own soul. The village, and indeed the world, needs your genuine light, Hiroki, not a shadowed version of someone you're not.
For when you bravely choose to honor your true self, when you free yourself from the illusion of fixed roles, you discover a profound inner peace, a joy that is deeply authentic, and a boundless creativity that will bloom far more magnificently than any stone you could ever carve or any role you could ever play. As the monk spoke, Hiroki felt a profound wave of courage wash over him. The heavy cloak of expectation began to feel lighter, almost transparent. He looked at the bamboo strips, so strong yet so flexible, and understood that he too could embody that resilience, that adaptability. He realized that his peace was not contingent on winning external approval, but on his own willingness to embrace his authentic self. The illusion of fixed roles began to dissipate, replaced by a nascent clarity, a quiet determination to pursue his true passion. He knew the path would be challenging, but for the first time, Hiroki felt a deep, authentic joy, a quiet blossoming of his own spirit, ready to cultivate his own unique garden, unhindered by the shadows of others' expectations. Story number 24, The Echo of the Unlived Life. In a modern metropolis, a place of endless possibilities and relentless striving, lived a successful executive named Ken. His life, from an outsider's perspective, was impeccably crafted. A soaring career, a beautiful apartment, and a network of influential acquaintances. Yet beneath this polished exterior, a profound sense of dissatisfaction gnawed at him. A quiet, persistent whisper in his mind constantly reminded him of paths not taken, dreams deferred, and choices made out of perceived necessity rather than genuine desire. He felt the heavy weight of an unlived life, a shadowy counterpart to his seemingly successful existence. Ken often found himself looking back, replaying key moments where he felt he had compromised his true aspirations. He had once dreamed of becoming a wilderness photographer, spending his days immersed in nature, capturing its raw beauty. Instead, he had followed a more pragmatic route, urged by his parents and driven by the societal pursuit of financial security and status. Now, in moments of quiet reflection, the regret was a sharp, piercing pain.
turning to resentment towards his past self for making those choices, and towards those who had influenced him. This internal conflict left him feeling hollow, disconnected from his own passions, and perpetually yearning for a past that could not be changed. The echoes of what if followed him everywhere, preventing him from fully embracing the richness of his present. One humid summer evening, escaping the relentless city noise, Ken wandered into a small, forgotten urban garden, a sanctuary of wild growth amidst the concrete. There, he saw an old man, his hands gnarled but gentle, tending to a patch of overgrown herbs. His presence exuded a profound sense of peace, a quiet acceptance of life's unpredictable seasons. Ken, feeling the familiar ache of regret, approached him. "Master," he began, his voice heavy with despair, "I live with the constant regret of an unlived life. I chose practicality over passion, and now I feel empty, haunted by the ghost of who I could have been. How can one escape the echoes of past choices and find peace?" The old man looked up from his herbs, his eyes like deep, tranquil pools. "Ah, the echo of the unlived life," he murmured, his voice like the rustle of dry leaves. "You chase a ghost, my dear Ken, believing it holds the key to your happiness.
But the unlived life is a mirage of the mind, a story you tell yourself that keeps you bound to a past that no longer exists. True freedom is found not in reliving the past, but in embracing the vibrant reality of the now." He continued, drawing from the boundless wisdom of the Dharma. The Buddha taught of anicca, impermanence. Everything is in a constant state of flux. The you who made those past choices is not the you who sits here now. That past moment, that past self is gone. To cling to that past, to constantly reevaluate what if, is to invite dukkha, suffering. It is a fundamental resistance to the truth of impermanence. Your regret is a form of clinging to a phantom, a story that prevents you from truly living this present moment. The Stoics, the old man added, would teach you about amor fati, the love of fate, and focusing on what is within your control. You cannot change the past. It is an unchangeable external reality. To resist it, to dwell in regret, is futile and self-defeating. What you can control are your perceptions of that past, your judgments about its meaning, and your actions in this very moment. Your suffering comes not from the past choices themselves, but from your judgment that those choices were wrong or mistakes, and your attachment to an idealized alternative reality. "But I feel such profound regret," Ken confessed, his voice filled with sorrow. "It feels so real, so heavy." "Regret is a feeling, like any other," the old man acknowledged. "It arises and it passes. But when you feed it with constant rumination, when you identify with the narrative of if only, it becomes a heavy burden." The purpose of regret, if it has any, is to teach you a lesson for the present, not to trap you in the past. It asks you, what can you do differently now based on what you've learned? The echo of the unlived life, he explained, is fueled by attachment to an idealized future that never materialized, and a lack of compassion for your past self. Perhaps at the time, given your understanding and the pressures you faced, those choices were the best you could make. Instead of criticizing that past self, offer it kindness. Say, you did your best with what you knew. It's okay. The practice is mindfulness, sati, the old man advised. When the thoughts of what if or I should have arise, pause. Notice the sensation in your body, the tightness, the ache. Observe the thought itself. Ah, an echo of the unlived life is here. Don't engage with the story. Don't add fuel to its fire. Just observe it, and then gently return your attention to your breath,
to the feeling of the earth beneath your feet, to the vibrant reality of this very moment. In that spacious awareness, the echo begins to fade, losing its power. And cultivate metta, loving kindness, for yourself, he concluded. Recognize that your unlived life is a story you hold on to, not a physical reality. Your life is happening now. Your worth is not determined by the paths you didn't take, but by your presence and authenticity in the path you are on. The deep wellspring of creativity and joy that you associate with being a photographer is still within you, Ken, waiting to be expressed. In this life, this moment, perhaps in unexpected ways.
For when you bravely release the phantom grip of the unlived life, when you choose to fully inhabit your present, you discover a boundless joy, a profound gratitude for the unique tapestry you have woven, and the limitless possibilities that still exist right here, right now, unburdened by the echoes of the past. As the old man spoke, Ken felt a profound shift within him. The heavy burden of regret began to lighten, replaced by a quiet sense of liberation. He looked at the wild herbs in the garden, thriving in the imperfect present, and understood that his own life, in all its unplanned turns, held its own unique beauty. The echoes of what if began to recede, replaced by the gentle hum of his own breath, a silent affirmation of his presence in the here and now. He knew the past couldn't be undone, but for the first time, Ken felt a deep, authentic peace, a quiet joy arising from the courageous choice to simply be fully alive in his own unfolding life. Story number 25, The Unseen Strings of Envy. In a vibrant, ancient city, famed for its intricate marketplaces and the dazzling displays of its merchants, lived a skilled artisan named Hiro. He crafted exquisite jewelry, each piece a miniature universe of shimmering gemstones and intricate metalwork. His talent was undeniable, and his creations were highly sought after. Yet, despite his success and the beauty he brought into the world, Hiro harbored a corrosive secret, a relentless, gnawing envy towards his younger, more flamboyant rival, Shin. Shin, with his audacious designs and effortless charisma, seemed to effortlessly capture the attention that Hiro felt he truly deserved. Every new triumph of Shin's larger commission, a more glowing review, a particularly grand display in his shop window, sent a fresh wave of bitterness through Hiro. He found himself constantly comparing their sales, their reputations, their very lives. This envy was an unseen string, subtly pulling at his heart, clouding his vision, and diminishing the joy he should have felt in his own accomplishments. He saw Shin's success not as a separate phenomenon, but as a direct threat, a personal slight that diminished his own worth. The more he yearned for what Shin possessed, the more unhappy and restless he became, trapped in a silent, self-inflicted competition. One scorching afternoon, after seeing a particularly lavish new display outside Shin's shop, Hiro felt a surge of such intense resentment that he had to leave his own bustling stall. He wandered to the city's ancient, silent temple, a place of refuge from the market's clamor. There, he found an old monk, his robes simple and worn, meticulously polishing a single tarnished bronze bell. The monk's movements were imbued with a profound sense of peaceful concentration. Hiro, feeling the familiar grip of envy tightening in his chest, approached him. "Venerable one," he began, his voice tight with frustration. "I am tormented by envy towards my rival. His success diminishes my own, and his presence steals my joy. How can one be free from this bitter emotion?" The monk paused his polishing, his gaze calm. "Ah, the unseen strings of envy," he murmured.
his voice like the soft chime of a distant bell. You feel pulled and twisted by them, do you not? But these strings are not woven by your rival. They are spun within your own mind from the threads of attachment and illusion. He continued, drawing from the boundless wisdom of the Dharma. The Buddha taught that dukkha, suffering, arises from tanya, craving or grasping, specifically from the craving for things to be other than they are, and the craving for external validation. You are craving what Shin has, and you are clinging to the illusion that his success somehow lessens your own worth. This clinging creates the bitter taste of envy. Your true worth, like your inherent talent, is boundless and cannot be diminished by another's light. The Stoics, the monk added, would teach you about focusing on what is within your control. You cannot control Shin's talent, his charisma, his sales, or the attention he receives. These are external. What you can control are your own thoughts, your own judgments, and your own actions in your own craft. When you compare yourself to others, you are engaging in a futile exercise that only creates internal turmoil. The Stoic path is to cultivate contentment, euthymia, by recognizing that your true fulfillment comes from living virtuously and excelling in your own domain, independent of others' achievements. But it feels like a genuine thread, Hiro insisted, a zero-sum game. That is a perception born of scarcity, the monk gently corrected. You believe there is a limited amount of success, of attention, of happiness, and that if another has more, you automatically have less. But the universe is abundant. Your rival's light does not dim your own, it simply shines beside it. Envy stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of interconnectedness, a belief that separate entities are in competition rather than parts of a larger evolving whole. The unseen strings of envy, he explained, are often tied to fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being loved. It's also rooted in a lack of self-compassion. When you are harsh with your own perceived shortcomings, you project that harshness onto others, and you find it difficult to truly celebrate their joys. The practice is to cultivate mudita, sympathetic joy, the monk advised. This is the direct antidote to envy. When you see Shin's success, instead of feeling a pang of bitterness, consciously make the effort to rejoice in his good fortune. Wish him well. This doesn't mean you have to like him or that your own desires disappear. It simply means you actively choose to participate in his joy, rather than allowing yourself to be consumed by resentment. In doing so, you expand your own capacity for happiness, and you untie those unseen strings. And cultivate mindfulness, sati, he concluded, setting down the now gleaming bronze bell. When the thought of envy arises, pause. Notice the sensation in your body, the tightness, the burning. Observe the thought. Ah, envy is here. Don't judge yourself for it. Don't cling to its narrative. Simply observe its presence and then gently return your attention to your breath, to your own hands, to the beauty of the piece you are creating. In that spacious awareness, the illusion of competition begins to fade, and the true joy of your own unique craft can finally shine, unhindered by the shadows of comparison. As the monk spoke, Hiro felt a profound sense of release. The tightening in his chest began to ease, replaced by a quiet spaciousness. He looked at the gleaming bronze bell, reflecting the light, and understood that just as the bell shone brighter with polishing, so too could his own spirit, not by dimming another's light, but by clearing the tarnish of his own internal suffering. The unseen strings of envy began to loosen, no longer binding him to a painful comparison, but allowing him to stand free, appreciating both his own light and the light of others. He knew the journey was long, but for the first time, Hiro felt a deep, authentic joy in his own craft, a quiet contentment arising from the courageous choice to simply be himself, allowing his own unique artistry to flourish, unburdened by the illusions of external competition. And so, our journey through these 25 stories of awakening comes to a gentle close. We've traversed the landscapes of fear and forgiveness, navigated the currents of loss and control, and shone a compassionate light upon the shadows we often hide. Remember, dear friend, the wisdom we've explored tonight isn't meant to be held as rigid truths, but rather as gentle invitations. Invitations to look inward, to observe with kindness, and to live with an open heart. The whispers of the unseen thread remind us of our inherent connection to all of life, even in moments of profound loneliness. The echoes in the empty space teach us to treat our inner critic not as a master, but as a misguided messenger. The river's unhurried flow guides us to surrender to life's unpredictable dance. Each narrative, each ancient teaching ultimately points us back to the same profound truth, that true peace, lasting contentment, and boundless joy are not found by chasing external circumstances, but by cultivating an unwavering presence, compassion, and acceptance within ourselves. As you drift into sleep, or simply reflect on the moments that lie ahead, carry with you this gentle knowing: you are enough, just as you are. Your journey, with all its imperfections and unexpected turns, is precisely as it should be. The empty boat of your awareness is vast and capable of holding all that arises, without judgment, without resistance. If these stories have resonated with a quiet truth in your heart, if they have offered even a moment of solace or clarity, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments below. Your journey, your insights matter. And if you wish to continue exploring these paths of inner peace and wisdom with The Empty Boat, please consider subscribing to this channel and sharing it with anyone who might benefit from these gentle whispers. May your sleep be deep, your dreams be peaceful, and may you awaken with a renewed sense of clarity, compassion, and boundless freedom. Until we meet again on the quiet currents of wisdom, may you find your anchor in the gentle rhythm of your own breath, and may your heart always lead you home.